Good evening. Special meeting of the Town Council of Los Gatos, May 27th, 2025 is called to order. Could we take the roll, please?
Councilmember Isto? Here. Councilmember Rennie?
Here.
Councilmember Badami?
Here.
Vice Mayor Moore?
Here.
Mayor Hudas?
Here. So tonight we have one subject on the agenda, and that is to consider a recommendation by the Planning Commission to adopt a resolution to approve architecture and site conditional use permit, subdivision, and mitigated negative declaration applications to demolish the existing commercial structures, construct a mixed-use development, 30 multifamily residential units with commercial space on the ground floor, approve a condominium vesting tentative map, and remove large protected trees under Senate Bill 330 on property zones C2, APNs 529-28-001 and -002. So we will, the way we will run the meeting tonight is that first we will get a staff report. The comment that we'll have tonight is only about the item that we have on the agenda. And so we will take those comments after we've had the staff report and had the opportunity to ask some questions. So we will take any comments right now about any items that are not on the agenda. So if anyone wants to speak about something that's not on our agenda tonight, or we have someone remote who would like to speak, this is the time. I don't have any cards of that type. Do we have anyone remote who would like to speak?
There are no hands.
Okay, so we will close verbal communications, and we will now move to the item that I just read. It's item number 1. And so we will have a staff report, and then there will be the opportunity for the council to ask clarifying questions of the staff. And then the applicant will have 5 minutes to present their application. There may be questions that come as part of that. And then we will take public comment, and I have a number of cards here, and if anyone wants to speak, please go ahead and fill out a card. And then after public comment, we will close the public comment, and there will be an opportunity for council members to make any observations or ask questions of staff, and then to deliberate on the item. So we hope to move effectively and efficiently through the agenda that we have. And so I would ask the public to keep your remarks to 3 minutes. And if there is something that has been said already, maybe you don't need to say all of it again, just so that we can keep moving. But we would like very much to hear the public comments on this topic. So with that, I would ask staff to orient us with the staff report.
Thank you and good evening. I'd like to actually have the town attorney start by providing some background of the regulatory framework applicable to this project.
Thank you. Gabrielle Whelan, town attorney, and I will give an overview of the builder's remedy and Senate Bill 330. Senate Bill 330 amended the government code to authorize housing development applicants to submit what's called a preliminary application. Once a complete preliminary application has been submitted, the applicant vests to the town's development standards that were in place at the time that the complete preliminary application was deemed submitted. This particular applicant vested prior to HCD's certification of the town's housing element. And as the council knows, a housing element is one of the required elements of the town's general plan, and the housing element must accommodate the town's regional housing needs allocation. The town's regional housing needs allocation is assigned by the Association of Bay Area Governments. And because this applicant vested prior to certification of the town's housing element by HCD, this applicant has elected to use the builder's remedy. The builder's remedy limits agency disapproval or imposition of conditions that would render a project infeasible if the development includes an affordable housing component. This particular applicant does include an affordable housing component. Next slide, please. There are several permissible grounds for denying or conditioning a project. The first would be that the agency has adopted a housing element that substantially complies with state law, and the agency has met or exceeded its regional housing needs allocation for each of the income categories that are proposed by the project applicant. The second grounds for denying or conditioning a project would be that the project as proposed would have a specific adverse impact upon public health or safety, and there is no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the specific adverse impact without rendering the development unaffordable. The statute defines a specific adverse impact to mean a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective, identified, written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date that the application was deemed complete. The third grounds for denying or conditioning a project would be if it were required in order to comply with a state or federal law. Next slide, please. The fourth reason would be if the project were zoned on agricultural land and there was not adequate water or wastewater facilities to serve the project. Next slide, please. And finally, another reason to deny or condition a project would be if the project were inconsistent with the town zoning ordinance and general plan land use designation, and on the date that the SB 330 preliminary application was deemed submitted, the agency had adopted a revised housing element that was in substantial compliance with state law. Next slide, please. For SB 330, and actually with regards to that last slide, I wanted to note that the government code section was amended as of January 1st, 2025 to provide that agencies can no longer self-certify that their housing elements substantially comply with state law. That certification can only be done by the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and the statute provides that its provisions are retroactive. And finally, with regard to Senate Bill 330 projects, public agencies are limited to holding 5 hearings on an application, and that includes any appeals. And CEQA does continue to apply to Senate Bill 330 projects. And I'm available for questions.
Councilmember Badami?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Whelan, for the report. That was helpful. So I'm looking at our packet here, and I'm looking at the draft resolution that's before us. And on page 4 of 6, item number F, it says, findings required for compliance with the Town of Los Gatos objective design standards for qualifying multifamily and mixed-use residential development. Is it the position of staff that we can make that finding, that the objective design standards are met?
I'll go first, and if the town attorney has anything to add. So the project does comply with the objective design standards with the exceptions provided as afforded by Builder's Remedy.
All right, we may follow up later, but that's good enough for now, unless Ms. Whelan wanted to add to it. I'd like for public comment.
Oh, sure. So it looks as if this finding is imported from the general findings that the town uses for architectural and site applications that aren't subject to the builder's remedy. And with regard to builder's remedy projects, the findings that apply are in subsection G of the resolution.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Another question for the town attorney. So in your slides, you talk about this definition of a specific adverse impact on public health and safety, and in your slides, you say this has to be based on, quote, objective, identified, written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was deemed complete. I've heard a lot, from public comments about health and safety, and I think this is a legitimate question. And so, does the town of Los Gatos have any objective, identified, written public health or safety standards?
So the objective standards that the town relied on in reviewing this application are in the Uniform Building Code and the Uniform Fire Code. And staff did not identify any conflicts with those two codes.
On this specific
On this
proposal?
project.
Thank you.
There's a follow-up to that. Do Los Gatos building and zoning codes refer to health and safety standards?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. Joel Paulson, Community Development Director. I unfortunately do not have the entire town code memorized, but I will do some digging. I know there is some findings related to conditional use permits specifically that do deal with health and safety, but they're not quantifiable or objective from my recollection.
Okay, thank you. There'll be quite a bit more on that later. For the town attorney, if I might ask, related to the environmental impact report, I believe that on May 14th at the Planning Commission, you stated that the town was embarking on a cumulative environmental impact review, and that would be completed by mid-June. Is that correct? Does that apply to this project? And then I have a follow-up.
Yeah, this particular project has had a mitigated negative declaration prepared for it, so it's doing its own environmental analysis. And as part of that mitigated negative declaration, there are cumulative impact analyses contained within the mitigated negative declaration. And the town CEQA consultant will be available for questions. With regard to the overall method of evaluating the cumulative impacts of the Builder's Remedy projects, after some review and thought, staff is recommending that each Builder's Remedy project have its cumulative impacts analyzed in its own environmental document. And so projects will be evaluating cumulative impacts when considered in conjunction with past, current, and reasonably foreseeable probable projects.
And if I could follow up on that, has this project reviewed the impact of other Builder's Remedy projects as well as those on the site inventory that were part of the housing element that was certified by HCD?
I think the town CEQA consultant will be best prepared to answer that question.
Okay, we can hold that then. With regard to providing direction to the council on mid-June, is that still going to happen?
Yes, my plan is to prepare a transcript of the study session that occurred on April 4th or 7th of this year, and then post that transcript along with updates to the town's website.
So follow up, will that have information that's important for the hearing that we're holding tonight?
In staff's view, any information that is important to the council has been provided, but we're happy to provide additional information if needed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, yeah, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this. Just for the benefit of the public, I wanted to hear a little bit more about the mitigated negative declaration, but is that also best for the CEQA consultant?
Yes, I mean, if you like, I could give an overview of the process.
Sure.
And so when the town receives a planning application, the town first determines whether there's any applicable CEQA exemptions. If there are not, then the CEQA consultant prepares an initial study, and then the initial study dictates whether a negative declaration, meaning there's no impacts, a mitigated negative declaration, meaning there's impacts, but they'll all be mitigated, or an environmental impact report where there are significant impacts that cannot be mitigated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can't see Councilmember Rennie have any questions? No? Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Then let's go ahead and go and get the rest of the staff report, Mr. Safdie, if you would, please.
Certainly, and thank you. So before you tonight, the applicant is requesting approval to demolish the existing on-site structures at 143 and 151 East Main Street and construct a mixed-use building with 24 market rate units and 6 below market rate price units, as well as ground floor commercial space. As noted previously, the application is being processed under SB 330, and the applicant has invoked their right to the builder's remedy. The under half-acre site would be developed with a 52-foot tall, 4-story mixed-use building occupying the majority of the project site. The 30 residential units would be distributed along all 4 floors of the building and would include 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms and range in size from 743 to 2,118 square feet, each of which would have their own private patio or balcony space. Commercial space is proposed on the ground floor along the southeastern corner of the property. Parking for the project is proposed below grade with vehicular access off of Church Street at the rear. The primary pedestrian entrance is proposed along East Main Street. 2 different below grade parking garage options are proposed with this submittal, and the applicant's requesting approval of both options. Option 1 is a 2-level parking garage with 47 standard spaces, and option 2 is a single-level parking garage with 39 spaces, and that one includes the use of both parking stackers and tandem spaces, which are not standard in the town. A number of exceptions pursuant to builder's remedy are requested, including building height, floor area ratio, density, setbacks, and parking, and all of this is detailed in Attachment 3, Exhibits 8 and 15 of the report. As noted, none of these exceptions are to the applicable health and safety standards. An initial study was prepared for this project pursuant to the CEQA guidelines, which included a number of project-level technical studies and is included as Attachment 1. This initial study concluded that the project would not have a significant impact on the environment with adoption of the recommended mitigation measures and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Each of those 13 mitigation measures identified are included in the conditions of approval in Attachment 2, Exhibit A of the staff report. Planning Commission reviewed this project on March 26 and voted 4-2 to forward a recommendation of approval to the Town Council with a strong preference for parking option 1, and that's the 2-level parking garage, and modified conditions of approval regarding tree species, hours of operation for the future commercial use, traffic control adjacent to the parking garage entrance, coordination of a construction safety plan with the high school, and limited hours for large trucks and deliveries during construction. Following the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant's legal team provided an additional letter regarding the parking options and the cumulative impact review, which was included as Attachment 7 of this report. And the applicant also provided a footprint comparison exhibit showing existing and proposed setbacks, which are included as attachment 8. Several public comments were received for this project, which were included as attachment 9 of the staff report, as well as Friday's addendum report and today's desk item report. And this concludes staff's presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I had one, and that may go back to the town attorney. How was it determined that this project meets the affordable housing question?
If it's all right with the council, I'll defer to the project planner.
Thank you for the question. So the requirement for builder's remedy, and Mr. Paulson, please correct me if I'm wrong, is 20% affordability. They're proposing 6 below market rates, which is 20% of the 30 total units proposed.
And how do we know that those will be priced below market? What is the mechanism, and what do we know what the price is?
I don't know the price, but there would be a deed restriction that says that the markets can't be sold above a price that is affordable to certain income levels.
Okay. And that's all 6. And do we have a breakdown by category of those?
And
Very low.
low income.
They're all low income? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. For people watching, and as a reminder to me, I mean, I remember the breakdowns. I know moderate is 80 to 120% of area median income. Can you remind me what low is? What percentage of area median income people need to qualify?
Thank you for the question. So that's typically 80 and below. It's typically a gap between 50 and 80, but 80 is the maximum, 80% of median.
And then the price would be set to not rent burden or cost burden someone. It would be, you could qualify with 1/3 of your income to be able to purchase that.
There's a formula that goes through based on the town's below market price guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
So before we start with the applicant and maybe more specific questions that might come up, I would ask council members whether they have any disclosures. And so maybe start with anyone who would like to disclose anything about this.
I would just disclose that I walk the site, and I walk it just about every day, working downtown and in close proximity to Town Hall, which brings us together tonight.
Okay, thank you. And that would include discussions with developers or anyone like that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Risto?
Thank you. I've certainly walked the site quite a bit, talked to school board members. I have not met specifically with the developer, although I was on the CDAC when a version of this came forward, and we spoke then.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I have, like Councilmember Badami said, I visit the site often, and I thought that I had had a phone call with the developer. I went back I tried to look back in my calls today, and it didn't go back that far. So I think I had a phone call, and so just thought I'd put that out there.
Okay. Any disclosures, Councilmember Rennie?
No, I haven't met with the applicant, and I would remind the purpose of the disclosures is also to say what you learned from the applicant that the rest of us may not know. And so I have not met with the applicant. Of course, I've walked past the site many times like everybody else.
Okay, thank you. I haven't had any meetings on this with the applicant or the public. I did spend about 6 hours observing the site and the traffic today and last week. So, okay, so we'll get on with now the applicant. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Rodriguez.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, my name is Ken Rodriguez. My firm, KRP Architects, is project architect. And with me tonight is our legal team and other members of our team, plus the actual property owner and applicant is available online for questions. So with that, let's go maybe to the next slide, please. So as staff mentioned, project is bordered by Church, High School Court, East Main Street, and is located across from Town Hall. In June 2023, I brought this project to the CDAC to gain input on a mixed-use commercial retail housing project that included for sale below market rate units, 6, as staff had mentioned, and market rate units, in this case, 24. That totals 30 units that we are proposing. Our submittal at CDAC received excellent input from the members of CDAC, and this encouraged my client, Capstack Partners, to make a formal application to the town. In May 2024, Capstack submitted the project before you under Senate Bill 330. Our team has worked very closely with town staff on many revisions to that original May 2024 submittal. Most recently, the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval to the Town Council on March 26th. And they also included the additional comments that Ryan had mentioned to you, which our client Capstack has agreed to. Next slide, please. Our project includes about 2,400, little over 2,400 square feet of ground floor retail in blue on this slide that's up on the screen, and it's located at the corner of Main Street and High School Court. And then additionally, the 30 units of much needed new for sale housing on levels 1 through 4 of the project. Next slide. The 4-story design takes its cue from the adjacent Los Gatos High School, designed by well-known California architect William Weeks in the early 30s. Other examples of brick and precast concrete detailing on local buildings can be found just a block further up on East Main Street, further west. Our project consists of 3 stories of height to 36 feet and a 4th floor that is stepped back to visually break the massing of a 4-story building to 52 feet. The current C2 zoning allows for a building of 45 feet in height. Our proposal request is for a 52-foot project at its highest point, or 7 feet above the allowable zoning. The 3-story massing of our building is similar in height, like I said, to the Los Gatos High School. The 4th floor is intentionally stepped back from the facade of the 3-story, or the face of the 3-story mass, so it doesn't appear as a 4-story building, more like a 3-story building with 4 penthouse units up on the 4th floor. So anyone walking by, driving by, will read this 3-story element of the building at 36 feet, and of course, see the units up above, but step back from the edge. Next slide. The building proposes to use materials of the highest quality: brick, precast concrete, recessed grid windows. There are exterior balconies on levels 2 and 3 that help further shade and add depth to the project. Next slide. I won't go through the key data again. Ryan has already capably done that, but we can refer to it if you have questions. Having lived just over a mile from this site and designed buildings for over 40 years in the town, I've always tried to design projects that are sensitive to the Los Gatos small town character, and in my opinion, this design further supports these ideals. I've also been sensitive to creating projects that do not create traffic issues. The CEQA document on this particular project proposes that it will add 17 new additional daily trips from what's currently there. And most importantly, those 17 trips do not occur during the AM peak or the PM peak hours in conflict with other traffic issues such as the high school and some of the other things. And because this is a builder's remedy project, staff and the town attorney would refer questions to them about the legality of that, but we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, and I have two related questions for you. So one is, did you have a chance to review the Los Gatos-Saratoga Joint Union High School District's letter with suggestions about the development proposal?
Yes.
And I'm sure you're aware of the Planning Commission's conditions, based on that.
Yes, we approved those that
okay,
night.
So I wanted to understand how you felt about those conditions.
Well, the conditions in their letter are slightly different than what the Planning Commission approved, and those particular items that the Planning Commission recommended to you as approval, my client has accepted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Risto?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I have a couple of questions. One is, I don't know if you can walk me through this. If you did not have the builder's remedy, what would be different about this application? Like, what are the things we're seeing that are due to the builder's remedy, and what could exist without it?
Well, I might defer some of that to staff, but I could give you just a general overview because Ryan mentioned a few. The code does allow buildings up to 45 feet. We're asking for 52. So there's a 7-foot height difference from what the current zoning is. We're also asking for somewhat closer setbacks on all 3 of the streets. And of course, our FAR is greater than what the current zoning would allow.
Thank you. And then the next question I had was, you've got the 2 parking options. If you can kind of walk me through from your side what the pros and cons are. And,
right.
I'll face that with, you're in a severely impacted parking part of town. And, I'm curious about grading versus reliability of a stacker. What happens if the stacker stops working? How hard is it to maintain a 2-story parking garage? Could you walk through the 2 options, please?
Yes. So our preferred parking per our letter to you that's in your packet would be the single-story option with stackers. That is the most efficient. And not only just the most efficient for parking, it's also the most efficient from a cost standpoint. And that's specifically one of the things that Builder's Remedy allows projects to seek. And in this particular case, that would be the preferred option by the developer. But what we proposed is the possibility of a 2-story, 2-level, which is significantly more expensive, would gain a few additional spaces, and our client, if possible, would love to have that option as well. If 2 options are not available, our client would only be looking to have approval of the single-level parking structure with stackers. Happy to answer any questions about stackers. We have experience with those, or any other thing that you had on your mind.
May I ask a stacker question, please?
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with them. I know that they're broadly used. I've never
Yes.
stacked my car, watched one. I want to go find one and look at it. A concern I have is, all of a sudden, a few years out, all of a sudden the stacker breaks and people can't park their cars. I don't know what the maintenance costs are. I don't know what the turnaround is. I don't know, if it's a parking garage, you can close the parking garage. If it's somebody's residence and they can't park there, there's not a lot of overflow parking. So can you talk to how that would be maintained and how reliable these are and what the cost is to keep that going?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, given that they are a relatively new product, 10 to 15 years. Now, though, the current stackers are they're so easy to work. You can work them off your phone. And that's primarily why the convenience of a stacker. They literally are what would be called a puzzle. They rotate, one open stall, and then they continue to rotate until your car comes down to the lower level. You can back it out, and it will rotate again for it. And they're so easy, like I said, to use. In terms of reliability, so far, they've been very reliable. But like anything, they're going to need constant maintenance. This will have a homeowners group that will maintain those stackers and keep them in really good working order because it's important, you know, to the project. I would tell you, like anything, if you need service and something breaks down, like for me, my garage door, when it doesn't work, I need to get someone out to fix it. There will be a homeowners association, and of course that would be an immediate thing that someone would do. But they're not that complex as they were 15 years ago when they were first introduced to the market.
Okay, thank you. That's
You
all.
bet.
Thank you, Councilmember Badami.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask some questions on parking as well, but when you started speaking to us about your project, you had mentioned that it does not create traffic issues.
Well, other than what the independent report calls for, the CEQA document, there are 17 additional trips that will be added to this site over and above what currently exists today. Now, I'm quoting from that report, but the CEQA consultant might want to talk to that, or even the public works staff may want to. I'm not a traffic expert.
Okay, but during your presentation, you thought it does not create any traffic issues, especially being a long-term resident and living a mile away from the location.
I was quoting the report.
Okay. I want to talk about the adequacy of the parking. And when I'm looking at the two options here, the preferred one, is that the one that has the 39 spaces, and then the two-level has 47 spaces?
That's correct.
Okay, and we have 30 units
Yes.
at 2 cars apiece per unit at maybe 60 cars?
No. I think the marketplace is different from that. This is an urban location. There'll be people, and especially younger people, who hopefully will fit this profile of the affordability, where they won't have 2 cars or maybe even a car. And more people are moving away from that. I personally am a 2-car family, but I will tell you that the marketplace is driving those type of parking ratios.
Thank you.
Yes.
If I could just follow up on that, then I have some questions about the CEQA and the EIR. You said it's an urban location.
Yes.
I'd be interested in your definition of urban.
Yes.
Also,
Sure.
I'd be interested in whether you are aware of the transit that is available
Yes.
there. What is the transit opportunity there?
There is a bus service, but let me talk a little bit about the urban, because I do have some experience right here in this town. When my home was being remodeled on Pennsylvania, I spent a year at the Forbes Mill condos with my wife and my daughter at the time. She was just a year old. It was a fantastic time, very different from my experience just up the road on Pennsylvania, where everything was car-driven or our walk was longer to get to downtown. We were able to take advantage of everything that is great about this town in terms of its retail, all of the support uses for it, and that's what I define as an urban. This is a city. That's an urban environment where we walked. I can remember that entire year we used our cars less than we've ever used. Now, that was a long time ago. That was 40 years ago, so 38 years ago. But it's only gotten better for more people, and in particular, younger people, which we're hopeful are going to be able to afford 6 of these units. So, and maybe just even a market rate unit. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. You maintain that Los Gatos is a city?
It's a town.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
On the environmental impact report, in your response, let's see, this is item number 1, and it is on page 503 of our report. The 2040 General Plan EIR studied sufficient build-out capacity to cover the project and the town's current development pipeline. Is the total number of units the only criterion for evaluating whether an EIR accounts for impacts of development? Aren't other considerations there, such as density? And are you aware whether the EIR studied the density of 71 units per acre that's proposed in your development?
I would have to refer that question to staff and the CEQA experts that are here tonight.
Well, this is from a
that's their
letter from
report.
you and your firm, so I would appreciate a response from you rather than deferring to staff.
Okay. If I could introduce Miles Emwally, who wrote that letter, and let him speak.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Yeah, the letter was from me, Miles Emwally, Land Use Council at Cobblentz, Patch, Duffy, and Bass. Thank you for the question. And the point of looking at the general plan EIR was to explain that the total number of units has been looked at throughout the town. And you're right, there's a lot of other factors that can come into play. It was making a relatively narrow point that there were concerns coming in that there are a lot of new projects in density, or rather the total number of units is really one of the main drivers, particularly for traffic, which was what that was getting at.
So if I could follow up, if a project were to have a density double of what was studied in the EIR, that the general plan EIR, could there be environmental impacts of the project, including air quality, water quality, biological resources, traffic, noise, and other relevant factors related to that density?
Well, I guess to be clear on my prior response, and I don't mean to be evasive here, but the point I was getting at was the cumulative, that there have been concerns raised about cumulative impacts. And in the cumulative impact scenario, I don't think it would matter if you go from 15 units to 30 units when we're talking about were an extra 1,000 units analyzed townwide. So yeah, on a project-specific level, which is not what the general plan EIR was looking at. I am not trying to say that the general plan EIR studied every impact of this project. That's not the point of the letter. It was that there were concerns being raised about the cumulative impacts and of having all these new units, and that has been studied.
Okay, thank you. I think Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a couple connected questions, and you started to go there, but I'm going to start in a different place first. This is kind of a question I would probably have asked if I'd met with the developer in a little more informal, but I want to start with the question of, I appreciate that you've given us a building that's only slightly higher than the maximum height, unlike some of our other projects where the developers seem to think much higher is needed. You've got an underground garage, which I think is creating a podium type style building. And usually I'm told to make it economically feasible, you need a lot more floors than the ones that you're suggesting. So my starting question is, how is it that this project pencils out this way?
Well, I'm not the legal expert. I am the architect, so I'll try my best.
It's an economic question, not a legal question.
Well, yeah, you're correct. Thank you. Nor am I the developer. Let me just clarify that. And I think that our client was really clear that he wanted to, from day one, work with a project that could be as tight as possible economically, but as close to as possible as the code. And that's, I have to admire that client. It's one of the reasons we took this job and wanted to be involved in it. You're right that some of the other projects are much taller that are proposed builder's remedy. They do other things, and I can't speak to any of that. What I can speak to is what I said at CDAC, that our client really wants to focus on a super high quality project in a downtown location with the highest quality materials and make this a special project. So that's where we started from, and currently in his mind we've met that goal. And hopefully with your approval tonight, we'll see that goal executed.
So let me go to my follow-on question. Where I'm really leading to is trying to understand the unit size mix. I think it's a good idea to put residential units next to a high school so students don't have to drive to the high school. Our worst traffic time is actually at school time. So if you put residential units next to the school, you've now eliminated a lot of car trips at the worst time. But when I look at the unit mix, you've got a lot of single bedrooms and some double bedrooms, and I think only one 3-bedroom unit. So it doesn't seem like it's extremely well designed to accommodate high school students. Perhaps, with one high school, parents or a single parent with one high school student maybe is going to fill the 2-story. And the reason this was connected is I was wondering, instead of creating units that service the high school, perhaps lots of single bedroom units create enough sales or rental dollars to make the project viable. That was the reason I asked the other question, but I'm really getting to the unit mix, and larger units might be more beneficial for helping traffic around the high school.
Well, I can say the unit mix, was studied by our client, and I think it wanted to be a wide variety of different user types. So a couple, a single person, the single bedrooms work great for that. Again, we have 2-bedroom units that we're proposing, and then also, as you noted, some larger units for 3. So I can't tell you what the full mix is, other than I can tell you that not all units would have, students in them. So some would be single occupant or 2 people that would be occupying those units.
Oh, okay, that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did have a question about the footprint, and I think I had asked staff, and then there's the inclusion of item 8, I think, which is attempts to show the footprint. I think it's, I'm wondering if it's possible to put that up on the screen. It's on page, let's see, 510, thank you. Great, thank you. If you could enlarge that a bit, that would be helpful. Great, especially that bottom right corner. So I had asked for this because I was interested in the sight lines, and there's a report from the traffic engineer that the sight lines would be improved by the new project. So just to orient ourselves to this, the red lines, is that the outline of the bottom floor of the unit?
Of the proposed building, yes, the red would be the ground floor, yes.
Okay. And when I look at page 325, A2.0, it looks like there's a column that's right there as well in that corner. If you were to extend off of the line of the side of the building on Main and also High School, it looked to me like there's a column there. I don't see that on this drawing. And looking at A2.0325, it looks like that's approximately a 30-inch by 30-inch column.
Yes, correct.
And so and I'll have some questions for the traffic engineer as well, but
Good.
From a diagonal, that 30 by 30 would be about 42 inches, correct? If you were to bisect that.
It's 30 inches by 30 inches is the column.
Right, and if you were to approach it, as you might when you're driving up there, from a diagonal or 45 degrees, it would be about 42 inches, I think.
I don't know. It's
Okay.
30 by 30,
Okay.
and it sticks out on the furthest point of the intersection of that 45 degrees. It's a 90-degree floor up above, and so that opens up the entire lower floor for visibility, so you can see not only the traffic but also pedestrians.
Okay, and is that a structural element, or is that something that could be removed?
It is a structural element, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for now. Anyone else? Yeah, Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I have a follow-on to that because I don't know if we can pull that up again, please. I'm sorry, Ms. Wood. As I looked at the building, because I was looking at the sight line, trying to imagine the sight lines today, I walked around the whole building. There are existing pillars. Are those pillars on the existing building indicated on the existing footprint, or are they also out?
They're not. They're not. This is the outline of the actual floor area. And you can see in that blue at the corner of High School and Main, the recessed blue that works its way up High School court. That is a covered patio element with a built-up seating in there for the Dio Cafe right now. And so that's not shown either on the existing building.
Okay,
But
so
the
there's
actual
existing
setback you can see is nearly zero there along Main Street where the blue nearly touches the property line.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So in terms of extra things that someone might be concerned about for sightline, they are existing right now and not indicated on there, and there's a pillar that is part of the proposed building that is not indicated on there.
Just on this document, it's clearly, as the mayor picked up, it's on the other documents, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And if I could follow up on that, because I spent some time over there as well. The existing post that's there, it looked to me like it was 7 inches, not 30 inches, and there was only one of them. Is that correct?
Right. It's just a wood frame, smaller post, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah. I think the difference on that, Dio Cafe is sort of my spot in town, is the raised seating. I think as you're sitting down in a car, especially something that might be a little lower than an SUV, you know, that is it gives you a snapshot that this new design will be significantly better than what exists there today.
Okay. One other question in terms of the design. The existing building has large plate glass windows on both sides, and while not perfectly clear, you can see traffic through them. Does your design have plate glass windows, not on the angle, but on the sides facing Main and High School Court?
Yeah, if you would go back to slide 4, thank you. We'll let the rendering look at that. And then there's also a 3D model that was prepared as a consultant prepared for the town that also will help show this as well. And I'm sorry, that's off my presentation, slide 4, so sorry. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that at the 45, there is the column that you talk about, the 30-inch column that comes down there. And then the building is stepped back at a 45-degree angle with full-height glass at the corners. And then as it steps around below those yellow awnings, you would have the awnings that would drop down slightly. And then also there's a raised planter up against the building. So you couldn't possibly see, well, you can see through the cafe and you may be able to see someone walking there, but they're not full height glass windows on either side.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now we will go to the public. And so I have a number of cards here, and first one is Dave Petzinger and then Toby Mockler. And you'll each have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Dave Petzinger. I'm the principal of Los Gatos High School. And at the high school, we still have significant concerns about the safety impacts of this particular project. After speaking at the previous Planning Commission meeting, I spoke with Ken Rodriguez and we were able to arrange a meeting. And we had the meeting for the first half hour out at High School Court and Church Street during supervision of the drop-off time. And ironically, it kind of turned out to be kind of a light day, honestly, or maybe just barely average. We have some days that are more significant in terms of traffic. We were able to come back to my office, have a meeting just to discuss it, and one of the first things that Ken said is, wow, you guys have a big problem out there. And I agree with him. I will say, I don't know it's you guys have a big problem. I think we have a big problem. And especially if you're neighbors, as neighbors, we have a big problem, taking care of the safety of our kids as they enter at High School Court and at Church Street. Adding 50 to 60 more vehicles to that corner concerns me, it scares me. You know, we've sent 2 students to Good Sam this school year in car and bike collisions. And as soon as you add 50 to 60 more cars to that corner, you know, it's not a question of if there's going to be further incidents, it's when there's going to be further incidents. So I'm asking that the council consider requiring the developers to make sure that we have a plan to address the safety of our kids as they come in. We've discussed previously peak hour traffic mitigation, garage safety features. I'm glad that we're on board with those two. But a commitment to going forward to addressing this safety as a good neighbor if this project continues. As a principal, my top priority is taking care of the safety of our kids. You know, it's one of our 2 main missions each day. We are safety of our kids and the education of our kids. So I implore you to do what you can to ensure that this development doesn't compromise the safety of the kids of Los Gatos High School. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate. I really appreciated the letter you sent. I thought it was thoughtful, and one of the things that I always tell folks is, you know, it's unlikely for a lot of these developments due to changes in state law that we're going to outright say no. But how do we improve the developments that are coming? And so I really appreciated the very tangible suggestions you have. So from your perspective, which of your suggestions have been incorporated and which haven't? Because how I read it is the construction, not having vehicles coming in and out during robust traffic time has been incorporated, which I think to me is probably the biggest one. Requiring the developer to invest in safety enhancements, I'm curious what you think about that. And then the audio visual, I think, have been included. The moving the garage and sightline obstructions seemingly haven't been.
Those are the 2. Yeah, we were concerned about the exit of the garage onto Church Street because we find for the most part when our kids come from downtown, they then leave Main Street and head onto Church rather than going across Main Street and you know, through the front of High School Court. So whether they're getting dropped off, walking onto campus, scooters, e-bikes, bikes, they tend to come down Church Street. So the exit directly onto there was a concern that I didn't feel was fully addressed when we talked about possibly having the garage open up onto Main Street.
Okay, and then one more question. So when you talk about requiring the developer to have a plan to address student safety concerns. I think that makes sense. How would you think about that kind of process-wise? Would that be something that you'd be willing to work with the developer on? And, you know, if this
Absolutely.
is approved, we require that the developer meets with you and outlines a safety plan?
Absolutely willing to work with the developer on that issue. And I think, you know, as we go forward, there's going to be issues that we're not thinking of. And I just want a commitment that we're going to be working together as neighbors in order to address them.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you being here and your commitment to this. Thank you.
Councilmember Badami and then Councilmember Risto.
Thank you, Mayor. Does the high school have an evacuation plan for the students in the event of a wildfire?
We have an evacuation plan that brings the students off campus into 2 locations. And then the evacuation plan off of a wildfire is currently in development, yes.
And have you thought about how this project with the added 60 cars and residents might impact the health and safety and evacuation of the students in this particular event?
Yeah, because half the student body would move onto Church Street into the church parking lot for the pickup. So it's directly in line of the current exit, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Risto, and then Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Principal. Glad to have you here. And, you know, as somebody whose kids went to the high school, my kids only walked or biked, and I agree, drop-off is a disaster. So hopefully there can be work done, you know, with this construction, but also moving forward with smoother drop-off and pickup and maybe pushing cars further away so the kids walking and biking are safer, you know, all the parents moving away, but from that area. One of the things I think about is because the traffic study indicated that the peak car hours would not increase from this project, they would be elsewhere. What I'm more concerned about is not the impact of once this project's in place, because if I lived there, I'd look out my window and the last time I would go near my car is during drop-off or pickup. However, construction is going to be super impactful. And I know, you know, the high school has done construction in the past and had to deal with how do you keep kids safe? What do you do along different streets? Is there a way you can work with the developer? Because one of the things I'm concerned about is where will things be staged? Where will construction workers park? Where, you know, how will that work in such tight proximity to the school? And as hours of construction are restricted, because they probably will have to be during drop-off and pickup, that will cause the project to go on longer, you know, so the impact will be longer. So would you be able to work with the applicant and the developer to find ways to maybe assist with either offloading or redirecting school traffic or making this so that it's the safest for the students and, you know, the impacts are going to be huge during construction and there's no getting around that, no matter what's built.
Yeah. Are we asking, can we redirect the high school traffic?
Well, would you work on a drop-off and pickup? You know, in the past, there's been drop-off and pickup only on a certain extent. There have been a variety of plans over the last 12 years. Have you thought about that, or would you?
I haven't thought about that. Bringing 2,000 kids and 200-plus staff members onto campus each day is difficult enough, given the limited entry points. I haven't thought about, you know, like closing off High School Court or Church Street to, you know, foot traffic or traffic in general. So I haven't had that thought at that point.
And I don't think you want to ever close off. Well, so hopefully, you know, with the hours, like figuring out what are hours that would be most impactful where you need students getting in and out, and what are ways that the developer can work with you, because I think it's going to be a complex puzzle.
Indeed, yeah. And again, I am more than willing to work with the developer on how we go about making sure that we bring kids and staff onto campus safely. So,
great, thank you.
Councilmember Rennie, and then I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Listening to two problems I heard, you mentioned 60 more cars at the corner of High School and Main Street, and there's lots of discussion about sight lines. One solution that might work is requiring cars to come out of the garage and make a left turn only, which brings them down to Church down near Forbes Mill where they enter Main Street, and then that doesn't send cars coming out onto High School Street, so it reduces traffic through there and reduces the problem with the sight line. Do you see any disadvantage to doing something like that? Do you think that might be advantageous, or is it just not worth requiring?
Currently, we do have drop-offs that occur coming off Main Street onto High School Court and then down Church in that same direction. We do have traffic coming from parents both directions on the drop-off. I suppose you could limit the residents to a left turn, but I don't know if that would be effective in mitigating that traffic, but I don't know. We do have traffic coming both directions for drop-off currently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I had a question about the time. I was maybe a little dated, but when my kids went to school, there was a 0 period. Is there a 0 period, or is it all 8:30 start?
No, the shift in statewide has been to 8:30 starts, so there's no current 0 period at this time.
Okay, and then on the other end, there are odd and even days. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
yeah.
what do the times look like on those?
For the odd days, you're going to have a window of 7:30 to 8:30 where it is going to be congested, and then the odd day pickup, there will be a window where a certain group of students are going to be leaving between 2 and 3, or 2:20 and 3 o'clock, and then another group of students leaving at 4 o'clock. On the even days, it will only be the entire student body leaving at 2:20.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Toby Mockler, and then Peter Rehan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Toby Mockler, and I serve as the Director of Facilities, Maintenance, Operations and Transportation for the Los Gatos-Saratoga Union High School District. I speak tonight not only as a district leader, but as someone who cares deeply about the safety, well-being and daily experience of the over 2,000 students who attend Los Gatos High School. Our district has a long-standing history of working collaboratively with developers to ensure that construction near our schools does not compromise student safety. A great example of this is our current partnership with Summerhill Homes, where we're jointly developing a new emergency access point for Los Gatos High because both parties recognise the need for proactive, student-centred planning. Unfortunately, that spirit of collaboration and safety does not appear to be reflected in the proposed 30-unit, 4-storey condominium project directly across from our high school. This isn't just another intersection. It is a highly trafficked gateway for students who are walking, biking, skating, and driving, many for the very first time. It's a location that serves as the front door to our school, where major events like graduation take place and where our families and neighbours gather. As it stands, the project poses serious and unanswered questions. What tangible benefit will this development provide for our students? What safety mitigations are planned during construction and once the building is operational? How can the town and the developer work with the school district to ensure this project becomes a partnership, not a hazard? We are not against housing. We understand and support the need for responsible growth in our community. But growth must come with planning, especially when it's across from one of the most active high school campuses in the region. We urge the Town Council to consider the following reasonable, student-focused actions before moving forward. Require a student safety impact study during peak school hours prior to any further permit approvals. Delay final building approvals until a comprehensive traffic mitigation plan is developed in partnership with the school, district and town engineers. Require the developer to contribute to permanent safety enhancements such as signage, crossing beacons, speed bumps, barriers, or additional crossing guards. We believe these are common sense measures. They will show our students, families and staff that this town values student safety as much as it values smart development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? I had one, and that the first item that you mentioned, could you elaborate a little bit about what would be in that?
Which item are you talking about?
That was the student safety plan. You had 3.
The unanswered questions, is that what you're...
Yeah.
I don't mention a safety plan in those 3. I have a tangible benefit for our students, what safety mitigations are planned during construction and once the building is operational, and how can the town and the developer work with the school district to ensure this project becomes a partnership, not a hazard.
I'm going down a little further in your talk, and you mentioned a student safety.
The safety impact study?
Yeah, 'cause I'm not familiar with that.
I think that the raw on that is just how many students travel through those points. You can sit on that intersection of Church and High Street between the hours of 7:45 and 8:30, and you will visibly see close to half the student population come through that section. Since this project came before the community, I've sat there about 5 times now just to go and witness it myself. 10 years I've been in education, seen a lot of intersections. It's probably one of the busiest I've ever seen. There is a lot of traffic, a lot of people, a lot of intersection between motor vehicles, pedestrians, and those on bikes. And I think all of that needs to be taken into very serious account.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next card is Peter Rehan, and then Erline Lund.
Good evening, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me, and my stick just fell on the ground. I only wish, my name is Peter Rehan. My wife and I are 37-year residents of Alpine Avenue, right up the street. I wrote a letter last Thursday. I emailed it to all of you. I'll try not to repeat myself. And I can only say that I wish I were as articulate as the last 2 speakers. The one thing I would like you to think about, and think about seriously, when you consider making a decision on this matter, is all of the times you have walked or driven up East Main and seen one of our darling high school students walk across the street. Always in a crosswalk, of course, and with earbuds, very intently looking at their phone, probably listening to Handel's Messiah, and probably looking at their phone so they could study for their calculus exam, and heading over to 7-Eleven to get a spinach smoothie. And think about those children, every one of them walking across the street, being as distracted as they are because they're high school students, and think about a project with 30 units and 80 parking spots. And the suggestion in the CEQA report that this would only involve 17 additional car trips is, in my mind at least, implausible. I think with 30 units, I think we can expect at least 30 car trips or maybe even 60 car trips, and that is of great concern to me. My 2 children graduated from Los Gatos High School, and I think about that very seriously. But in any event, I thank you so much for your time, and I want to leave you with one parting thought. An old friend of mine who's a Superior Court judge, Peter Stone, once said when he made decisions, at the end of the decision, he made a friend for a minute and an enemy for life. So, and that's why I appreciate what you're doing, because it's a hard job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Erline Lund, and then Desmond Camus.
Good evening. My name is Erline Lund, and I live in Bayview on the other side of town. But to make a point to the architects, saying that he lived at Forbes Mill and that one car process was fine. Well, that is probably true 35 years ago. But we moved here 2 years ago and bought into Forbes Mill, and each of us have a car, and yet we're both retired. And that's the reason we left there, because there is not enough parking. And the other thing is trying to get in and out of that place during school hours. The kids are coming around Church Street around that corner, and you can't get in and out. So I'm going to try very hard not to go over things the same and maybe have a couple different viewpoints. Safety, the traffic, as we all know, I don't think it's reasonable to think that if you have a 1, 2, and 3 bedroom place that you're only going to have one car. That's not going to happen. The other thing that really concerns me all over town, not just here, are the exits out of this town. Let's say we have a horrendous fire or an earthquake. Now, I don't think it's reasonable to think you're going to go down Main Street and get on 17, because that's going to be a roadblock, as it is most of the time, maybe on fire, earthquake damaged the road. So as I see it, and I am pretty much a newcomer here, I can go out Main Street, or I can use Los Gatos, Saratoga. Those are the ways that I understand to get out of town. This is a one lane each way road out of town on Main Street. We're not getting out. I mean, it's that simple. We're not going to get out. The other thing is I'm looking at all the exceptions that this builder wants to have. He wants an exception for height. He wants an exception for setbacks. You know, at some point, the council needs to say, you know, it doesn't work. You can't have all those exceptions. They were these guidelines were put in for a purpose, and you have to hope that you all had guidance in picking those guidelines to go through down the years to establish this beautiful community. So the way that I see it, there is a kind of a fix-it, and that is to lower the density. Now, it won't solve the whole problem, but it'll solve a lot of it. I know the contractor doesn't want this because you make your money off the density, and I realize that. I have built before. But the town is trying to make so many concessions to this builder so that this can work. I think at some point you need to look at your students, and you need to look at your town and the people in that town, and you need to say, it doesn't work. We need to find a different plan. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you. I apologize for pronouncing your name wrong.
That's okay. Everybody does.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Desmond Camus and then Alex Camus.
Good evening. My name is Desmond Camus. I'm a resident of Los Gatos, and I'm here to speak favorably about the development on 143 to 151 East Main Street. This is a beautiful and well-placed project. These homes will allow their residents to easily access the great services that our town has to offer. Young families will be able to take their children across the street to the library and to the farmer's market. And when those children grow older, parents will be able to look out their window and see their teenager walk to high school. Empty nesters looking to downsize will be able to easily have an active life living in these homes, being just minutes from the Los Gatos Creek Trail, the movie theater, and all of our downtown shops and restaurants. I hope that the council sees the value in approving this project and other housing developments, not just for helping Los Gatos achieve its housing goals, but because of the real people that will get the opportunity to live and thrive in this community. Thank you.
No, I don't think there were. Oh, yes, Councilmember Badami has a question.
Thank you. Just a quick question for you. Are you currently a resident of our town?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Alex Camus.
Good evening. I'm Alex Camus. I am currently a resident of Los Gatos. I'd like to share my excitement for the development at this site. This proposal is well thought out and desperately needed. These homes will provide much needed housing as well as give the students who live there an opportunity to attend the great schools in Los Gatos. These homes are next to the high school and will help bolster its flagging enrollment. According to the California Department of Education, since its peak in 2018, Los Gatos High School has lost 11% of its student body. Considering Los Gatos Union School District has lost 20% in the last decade, that doesn't bode well for our high school district. Propping up declining enrollment means our schools will be able to retain its great teachers and all of the programs and services they offer. All that being said, I don't want new housing just because it will help our amazing schools remain amazing. I want new housing because the people who will become our neighbors will enrich our community and fill it with even more character. I'm asking that the council vote to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruben Galvan and then Bruce Mitchell.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Ruben Galvan. I'm a proud NorCal Carpenters Union representative. I'm here about to talk to this development. I'll take a moment to, raise the concerns about the community on the safety of our children. But I'm also here to talk about, as we look to this project and other future developments, to make sure that the developers, the owners, and the contractors are doing the right thing. That means paying fair wages to workers and offering them health insurance benefits, as well as creating opportunities for apprentices from accredited programs. These workers help build our town. They deserve to be paid enough to live here and support their families. Health benefits are important. No one should have to choose between their job and their health. And by hiring apprentices, we give local youth people a chance to learn valuable skills and grow into good careers. Let's make sure Los Gatos stays a place where growth is fair and everyone benefits. I ask the council to consider these labor standards before approving permits to this and other future projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Mitchell and then Karen Yamamoto.
I'm Bruce Mitchell. My wife and I live at 98 Alpine Avenue here in Los Gatos. I'll keep this brief. Our concerns are predominantly for pedestrian safety and traffic congestion. That's been well discussed tonight. So all I'm going to say is that all the other comments I think are valid also.
Thank you. Karen Yamamoto and then Lee Fago.
Good evening, councilmen and ladies. Okay, I got a different perspective on this. I am not for this at all. My daughter was a junior when that gym went in right next to Los Gatos High School. I don't know how many times my kid was evacuated from the high school because of the construction, and it is not even half the size of what you're proposing. Between the so-called gas leaks, the water, the plumbing, all of the infrastructure that had to go on that interfered with my daughter's education.
Sorry, would you mind addressing your comments to the council, please?
I am. I definitely am. But I want you all to know this is our children. And that project was only a year. How long is this project going to go for? 4? 5 years? That we're going to have to, our children are going to be impacted? My son is in 7th grade. By the time this gets started, he's going to be totally impacted. How many times is he going to be evacuated? How many times is his stress level going to be so high because he has to be evacuated out of a test? My daughter's education was really severely impacted. Her stress level from being evacuated the first 4 times in 3 months. That's ridiculous. No child should have to go through emergency evacuations on top of the regular evacuations that are protocol for the high school. on top of where are the kids going to be evacuated? The mental anxiety and stress that these kids are impacted with. You have to consider their emotional state. How is this going to impact them? How is this going to impact our families? It's not just about traffic, but those people who live in those buildings, they're going to have younger children. How are they going to go from that building that they're proposing to the elementary schools? That's more traffic. And that's more stress. And that's more anxiety, not only on our residents, but our children and our staff that work at our high schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Lefa Go, and then Majid Alasvandian. Lee first.
Good evening, and thank you for this very informative and helpful session with the community and the developers. I believe that this design and the character of this mixed-use building fits the town's aesthetics and the housing and retail needs and opportunities. However, this is the wrong site, and it is overbuilding on Main Street immediately next to the high school, with a plan that does not include enough on-site parking for residents, their visitors, or the retail customers who would come to that retail location. And with the high school court and Church Street full also, as you've heard from several people today who witnessed that, this is going to be a significant problem multiple times during the day. Further, being adjacent to the school, not only is this going to create inconvenient gridlock, at least twice a day, morning and afternoon, but a serious danger in an emergency on or near this site. Vehicle, pedestrian traffic, plus emergency vehicles will not be able to safely and instantly, as needed, transition from this to and from this site. Too many exceptions have been requested. As our elected officials, council members, please consider the CEQA impact, not just this site alone, but with the surrounding developments underway, their impact, and while approving the design, I do like the design of this new building, it requires this to be located in a site within our approved housing element, like Western Main Street, not East Main, but West Main, may be a better location for this building. The other thing that could be done if you stay at this site is to reduce the size of the facility so that you don't have the impact that everyone has been describing to you this evening. Safety must be a primary concern for all parties involved. Other sites already have filed, and there are places along the boulevard would also might be a good site for this type of building or a similar building. And this would perhaps benefit the developer, that they could build something spread out a little further on the boulevard, as opposed to being in such a tight spot on Main Street next to the high school and forcing them to go up. I think going out would be much more reasonable at another site. So please take that consideration when you're determining whether you're going to approve this as it has been submitted or request additional changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Majid Alasvandian, and then Allison Zeidler.
Good evening. I've been a resident of Los Gatos for the last 27 years. I live right on the Cleveland. So this project is from my porch. I'm going to see this project. And it's basically, it's going to block the church. I can see the church from my porch. This is going to block the church. It's not going to block just the church, the sphere of the church. Have faith. This is too tall, too high, too dense for this. This is the worst spot in the whole city of Los Gatos for this kind of high density project. My kids went to school, Van Meter, Fisher, and currently one of them graduating from high school. It's not just the kids from high school. We have folks driving their kids, to Van Meter, middle schoolers riding their bicycles to Fisher, and Los Gatos is if I use an analogy, it's like a funnel. The downtown is on tip of the funnel. We have 3 lanes on each side from Lark to Blossom Hill, 2 lanes from Blossom Hill south to Nino. From then on, it becomes 1 lane. 1 lane goes, 1 lane goes back. I have been to the high school on Church, when there is a truck delivery on the Church. Traffic is going to
Sorry,
back
would
up.
you mind addressing the council, please?
Yeah, sorry. So on the Church, there's 1 truck delivery backs up the traffic. Now, we need to look at this thing holistically, not in isolation. Just like this project creates 60 cars, that many trips, and then another project create another 200. Now, we just need to look at this thing holistically. This town, I used to sit on my porch for half an hour, at 7:30, there's no traffic. That's back then. Now there's so much traffic. We have delivery people. I mean, these people are going to have delivery people. Amazon truck is going to be there all the time. So I don't buy that you're sensitive, Mister, to the town. You basically doing your job. Builder wants to make money. That's fine. We understand that. But we need the council. My request to council is please take into consideration the well-being of the residents, people who live around. We also have the fire issue. The map, the new fire hazard map by Santa Clara just came out. My house is high risk, and that's the house right behind the library. And this property is not that far. We need to take into all that builder remedy tools. They all came before we had these fires. We need to pay attention to the fact that we will have serious risk problem with the fire.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Allison Zeidler and then Tony Alarcon, and that's the last card that I have.
Good evening, Council. My name is Allison Arnell Zeidler. Nice to see you again. I would like to address the public safety issue here. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We're considering adding density on the edge of the wildland-urban interface. In Paradise, those homes burned down. In Santa Rosa, they burned down. In Pacific Palisades, they burned down. I understand that the state has mandated more housing. Even the state, however, makes an exception for developments that would threaten public safety. This proposed development does threaten public safety. As mentioned in my comments at the May 20th City Council meeting, Los Gatos High School does not have a way to evacuate its 2,100 students and staff if a wildfire approaches. There are no buses and few cars. It takes 25 minutes to leave the Los Gatos High School parking lot when school gets out. Main Street has a single lane in each direction and traffic does not move. We already have a life-threatening situation if a wildfire approaches. Recall that Pacific Palisades Charter High School burned and 2 elementary schools. In Paradise, Santa Rosa, Maui, and Pacific Palisades, some residents died in gridlock trying to flee. Adding 30 condo units, roughly 60 cars adjacent to the high school on Main would intensify a similar bottleneck in Los Gatos. To Councilmember Aristo's point, let's not forget that the development would not pop up overnight. We would face multiple years of excavators, cement mixers, steel beams, large trucks, utility installation, etc., creating dangerous conditions, possibly evacuations, adjacent to the high school. My own junior daughter has already almost been hit several times crossing Main Street. The additional activity of a large development going up adjacent to the high school would contribute to that chaos and danger, especially with the closer setbacks and sheer size. I know the town's worried about developers suing if their projects don't sail through. What about the potential lawsuits due to the public safety hazard? Foreseeable injury, as lawyers call it. A developer choking an already overburdened evacuation route on the edge of the wildland-urban interface with its construction is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Developer David Blatt and CSPN LLC are attempting to strong-arm unsafe conditions of development adjacent to a high school whose 2,100 students and staff already do not have a way out in a fire. They can evacuate them 1 block, but not away from the conditions. They don't have any way to get them out, and the cars can't get them in. Please reject this project on safety grounds, at least until the town can create a workable evacuation plan for the 2,100 students and staff at the high school and residents of surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Last card I have is Tony Alarcon, and then if there's anyone online, we'll go to Zoom after that.
Hello, Council. Tony Alarcon. I'm speaking for the Los Gatos Masonic Lodge located at 131 East Main Street, next to the subject property. I would request council members take a look at page 147 in the packet. Item number 1, issues and concerns, to get a better picture of the height and scope of 131 East Main versus the proposed project. We have a general plan. We took the time to do our housing element, have our guidelines and codes for a reason. And, you know, I was listening to the architect. I do like the design. I couldn't think of a worse location to put it, let alone trying to ask for a density bonus, which doesn't make any sense. The architect said the market is driving this, meaning wanting to put 50% less parking stalls instead of 86 that the project requires. And he's correct, the market is driving this. The market's driving a request for a setback exception, a request for a height exception. All of these are the market driving the need for more density, 30 units, when if I read this correctly from the project, it should be 8.5 units. Those extra residential units, while they're needed in town, is not needed at this particular location. The building is above our height variance. It's going to cast a massive shadow over our Masonic Lodge next door. And I would just ask that the town council, we understand the builder remedy. I do very much like the architecture. I think it fits our town more than some other projects that have been done. But I would ask that the town listen to the representatives for the high school district. I think they made some very compelling points on child safety. This is a choking point in our town. The residents that are there, if we put another 30 units, you're not going to be able to get out, even with the beach traffic. We're already seeing it now. So I would just ask to not give any exceptions in terms of setbacks or height and the number of units. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have anyone on Zoom who'd like to speak?
We have 3 hands on Zoom.
Okay.
Cynthia?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Cynthia, can you unmute your mic? We'll move on to the next one and we'll go back to her.
Okay, thank you. Next one.
BK?
Okay, BK, go ahead.
Went to Los Gatos High. We love Los Gatos High. We appreciate the high school. We appreciate everything about Los Gatos. And we trust all of you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, all of you on the council. We know many of you, and we really do trust you. And we also appreciate Mr. Rodriguez. This is a beautiful development that he's done. Beautiful does not mean good. To be blunt, this is just a bad idea. We all know that, but much like the emperor with no clothes, a Miami developer called Capstone has come in and convinced us under the builder's remedy that there's something good about this and that we cheer for it. I say, town council, mayor, let's stay up, let's stand up, let's be the cats that we really are, and just say no. There's numerous reasons why this Miami developer, who, by the way, we should look into the disaster that they caused with two developments in Portland, development in Atlanta, El Paso, and Miami, or the disasters that they are because they think Los Gatos is one of those. Our community is not an urban development, as you said, Mr. Mayor, but it's a community that we love. The areas of the builder's remedy that allow us to turn this one down are simple. Number one is safety. This is probably the most unique corner in all of Los Gatos. 2,200 students and staff cross that every day. Across the street is the church with over 100 people nearly every day going to the nursery, the senior programs, and so forth. This is not just a potential liability, this is a liability. I attended the Planning Commission. We spent more time talking about the color of the trees than the potential and likely death and injury of our students. I'm no mathematician, but I think the fellow who did the 17 traffic study needs to go back to Los Gatos High and have Dave enroll him in an analytic mathematical program. There is no way that based on the 60 cars and so forth, you're going to have 17 additional cars. You know that, we know that, it just doesn't work. Number two, on the builder's remedy, we're required to look at the aggregate impact. We have a wonderful development right behind the high school called Summerhill with 155 units going in. The Capri Drive location with 119 units. 30 in this specific area, as another gentleman just commented on, is just plain the wrong, as I said before, egg in this hole. And finally, the inconsistent zoning and building plan. It's so evident this emperor has no clothes. The setbacks, the height, and so forth. My suggestion is simple. Mr. Rodriguez, you're a fine architect. We ask you to develop something that's wonderful for this site. 2 stories would be beautiful. Let's make the right thing happen, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We have someone else on Zoom.
Rich?
Go ahead, Rich.
Hi, sorry about that. I was on mute. Hi, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Rich Stevens. I was born in Los Gatos 60 years ago. My sisters, my wife, my 3 daughters, and I all graduated from Los Gatos High School. With this, I believe that I can state that I have firsthand knowledge of the area that this is proposed for in our town. I think this is a horrible idea for the owner, the architect, the residents, the high school, and the town, for many of the reasons that have been discussed this evening. I think it would be a very bad place for the residents themselves to live because of everything that's going on in the area. I also believe that the proposed businesses would be very challenged to succeed based on the location and difficulty in getting there. We don't have good public transportation in Los Gatos, and that's not going to change. We don't have wide roads in Los Gatos, and that's not going to change. We have a problem in Los Gatos, and that's going to remain. Having lived here for most of my entire life, the last 60 years, I can state, I believe that I have firsthand knowledge. I went to Los Gatos High School. The last thing we need near the high school is additional traffic. I'm curious where the traffic numbers came from. The 17 extra trips is insane to me. I don't think it's realistic whatsoever. As things exist today, I am terrified for our student safety. I've heard these stories that the principal referenced of kids getting injured. I travel that area. My friends, my family have all experienced the problems crossing Main Street during lunchtime, during before school, after school, etc. Traffic and the ability to escape the area, if needed during a disaster, would be impossible for students, teachers, residents, and businesses. In fact, getting anywhere, in or out, is going to be almost impossible during multiple parts of the day. Please consider the safety of all of us. This is a bad idea. I wonder if the owner and architect have a real idea where this is and what a typical day looks like and what it would do to the town. I find that hard to believe if that's the case. Last thing I'd ask is if the developer believes and the architect believes this project is such a great idea, rather than hide behind SB 330, I'd ask that it be filed without SB 330 and instead work with the town towards a more positive solution for everyone. I think that would be something that everybody would like to see. But again, this building, the way it's designed, is great, but not here. Please be extremely cautious when evaluating this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe we may have had one other.
There's 3 more. Melissa?
Okay. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hello, my name is Melissa, and I am a Los Gatos resident, volunteer, mom, and educator. I am a pedestrian and a bicyclist. I grew up in this town. I emphatically oppose the building of this property on East Main Street. To build this would be extraordinarily dangerous and would have an adverse impact on our town. The town and school district have been doing an amazingly admirable job of controlling what they can in this area, but a new influx of cars, trucks, and pedestrians would pose a grave risk to our community. The high school, preschool, recreation center, gym, library, and the other entities in the immediate vicinity means that there are constantly pedestrians and bikers of all ages in this area. The construction and implementation of this project would significantly disrupt this area and cause a danger to most. Little ones going to preschool or ballet, the elementary students going to programs at the churches, rec center, and schools, the seniors going to lunch at Grace Church and other classes and events at the rec center, the high school students hanging out or traveling to and from school are just a few of these groups who could be negatively impacted by the increased congestion in this area from cars, trucks, and people. I have witnessed car accidents recently in this already congested area. I have seen toddlers dash into the road despite their grown-ups' best efforts. The danger of emergencies and evacuations can also not be ignored. When I was a child, I lived here through the chaos of the '89 earthquake. I also remember when I was at my best friend's house downtown, not far from the high school, and we were evacuated when ash rained down from a wildfire in the hills. I have these visceral memories of trying to evacuate and find family members in these streets. It was not easy then, and it would be even harder now. I implore you to consider the safety of our precious community and do not allow this project to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Gaylord?
Go ahead.
Hello, thank you. I'm a parent. We're one of the people who actually moved to Los Gatos for the schools. I have a high school student and a middle school student that will go into the high school and an elementary student. So I expect to have kids walking to the high school up until 2033. I echo everything that was said here. I'm very much concerned for their safety during construction and once the project is live. I would like to add another point of potential danger, and that is during their lunch break. Many students walk outside of campus and around the area, and that is another point where pedestrians can be a danger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Cynthia?
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I am a resident of Los Gatos. I have a teenager who goes to the high school. She also went to Grace Preschool. I'm a little concerned about where the construction trucks will be parked. I think this was brought up, but it was not answered. So I would appreciate if someone could answer that question. Right behind this proposed site is the preschool. If you have a preschooler, you walk them into the preschool. I am very concerned for their safety, their tiny little lungs that need to breathe this air that's going on. And then also, I I think it's been brought up quite a few times, but I just don't see how there is a realistic parking spot number for this building. We've said that there will be 30 residents, right? So I keep hearing a minimum of 60 parking spots. But I live in a building, I live in a 1-bedroom, and I have a parking spot, but everyone else has 2 parking spots who lives here. There are only 7 units, and we also have 5 parking spots for guest parking and 1 for handicap parking. And then you also have the cafe and whatever other businesses might be in this building. So I'm just wondering how we got to 37 or 47, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact number of parking spots. So where are these cars going to actually go to? Where are they going to park? How will that affect the town? Obviously the concerns for safety and for how it impacts our city have been addressed or have been mentioned, but these specific numbers just do not add up. We do not have the parking that would need to be required for a building like this. So I'm just really interested, as someone who's not been to many of these meetings, how that number comes about. Is there any type of legal number that has to be met for that many units? And I'm just concerned, like all others have spoken before, about the safety of our students at the high school and at the preschool and next door to the recreational area as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom who'd like to speak?
Larissa?
Go ahead.
Everyone, my name is Larissa Cantano. I'm a resident of Broadway, and I have 2 young kids, so I take them to school every day at Blossom Hill and Mariposa Montessori. I used to bike. I have a cargo bike, and I would go right by the high school and drop them off at their respective schools. And unfortunately, I had to stop because the traffic situation in that area was so bad. So I am opposed to this project. I understand the need for more housing. I hope that we can find something that really works well for our town and for other residents to enjoy it, but I don't think this project is it. I think the location is dangerous. I agree with the speaker before me who said that this area is sort of like a funnel, and it's really hard to get in and out during school hours, during beach traffic hours, and during all those other times that our town becomes a little bit more busy. So once again, I'm opposed to the project. I would love to see some modifications made if the project does go forward. I understand builder's remedy. I understand the state law that goes into it. But I do think that if the town council is to approve this project, I'd like to see a reduction in size and hopefully more parking spaces to be able to accommodate all those cars and residents. I have lived not only on Broadway, but on Villa and Los Gatos Boulevard. And unfortunately, as someone who hates driving, have always had to have 2 cars for myself and my spouse. And then just one final point, my husband is a firefighter. He has been fighting city fires and wildland fires for almost 25 years. And I want to just double down on the concern of fires and evacuation in our area. The more buildings we put downtown in Los Gatos, the harder it'll be for residents to leave in case of an evacuation. And as some other speakers noted previously, the Broadway district and the area just above the high school have recently been upgraded into a high fire danger zone. So once again, I oppose this project. I understand the need for more housing in California as a longtime born and raised Californian, but I don't think this is the location for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers?
There are no more hands raised.
Okay. So I think this is likely to have a fairly long discussion and questions. And so I would suggest that we take a recess now.
Mayor?
Yes?
You may want to have the applicant come up for rebuttals.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Miles Amwali again from Cobblers Patch, Duffy and Bass. I'll keep my remarks short here. I'm going to first start with the legal framework that we're in. People have talked about builder's remedy. We've heard about safety concerns. And then I want to talk about some of the facts that are in the record. So first, with the legal framework, attachment 2 to your staff report contains the approval resolution. And I think that portion G of it, which is on page 4 to 5, contains the most important legal piece, and that outlines the findings required to deny a builder's remedy project. Councilman Baristo, you asked, Badami, you asked about some of the other findings, and while those are made and there are exceptions asked, the builder's remedy ones are really the only ones that we look to whether you can deny or reduce this project. And as the resolution says, none of these findings are present. As for the safety concerns, I'm first going to talk about what the law says, then we'll talk about the facts. So you can deny a project if there are health or safety impacts, but it's a very narrow exception. These are objective, pre-existing health or safety standards that cause a specific adverse impact that cannot be mitigated. And the statute itself says that these conditions arise infrequently. So there's a presumption that housing does not cause a safety impact. Now, obviously that's been a big concern tonight, and we recognize that there's big concern among the community about this location. I think it's really important that you carefully consider the traffic report. This is the one expert that has looked at this issue, and it's net new trips is the question. So there's existing development there. This is a redevelopment project, and there will actually be there's 17 new trips, net new trips, but there's actually no new peak hour trips. It's a reduction. So these concerns about traffic and safety in this area, the project is not exacerbating. And you can only look at how the project changes the conditions. There's also concerns about safety during construction. And there were a number of conditions that were added during the Planning Commission meeting and that are also standard conditions. We must work, in one of them in particular, condition of approval 106 requires the preparation of a project safety plan, and that is done in coordination with the high school, and there's a commitment to doing that. But there's others. Construction deliveries are limited to outside of school hours. The garage door was redesigned to respond to the high school's concerns. There's a transportation demand management plan to reduce trips. There's a construction management plan. So there's a variety of measures that we will take.
Thank you. Are there questions? Councilmember Badami?
You mentioned my name, so yep. I'm going to talk back to you. You had mentioned some argument about a specific adverse impact on public health or safety as being a finding or reason to deny a project, but you were elaborating on a certain circumstance where it can't be like a one-time event. Is that what your understanding is, or what's your legal background in
Sure.
that?
So in order for there to be a denial based on a safety impact, it needs to be based on an objective, pre-existing health or safety standard. So you need to be able to point to a standard that is being violated, a health or safety one that cannot be mitigated. And this issue has been evaluated in the mitigated negative declaration, and there were questions earlier to staff about, are there objective standards in the code? And what staff has found is that there are some, particularly in the building code and the fire code, but none of them are being violated. And so we're in compliance with all health and safety requirements. And the one concern we are hearing is about increased traffic, but the actual analysis in the record shows that there's not going to be an impact as a result of traffic.
So your understanding is that this being in a designated wildfire area and the lack of evacuation plans doesn't present a health and safety issue, being right next to the high school with 2,100 students?
My understanding is that there's no objective standard that says that in this location, being adjacent to a high fire safety zone, that there's a basis to deny this project. There's no objective standard that applies to that issue.
Thank you.
So I had a follow-up question about safety standards, and a question I had is about setbacks. I'll read this to you and ask if you agree with this. Setbacks or required distances between buildings and property lines, streets, or other features serve several crucial purposes in urban planning and development. Primarily, they ensure adequate space for emergency and maintenance vehicles, promoting safety and utility access. Do you agree that setbacks can be an objective safety standard?
If a setback is adopted in order to address a specific health and safety standard, it could be, but the setbacks that the town has in this location were not adopted for safety standards. The one safety setback standard is the sightline one, which is addressed in my letter on page 5. The town standard drawing ST 232, which is what Mayor, you were asking about earlier, how this compares to the existing. That's the only safety standard that I'm aware of that relates to setbacks at this location.
And sightlines do relate to setbacks, correct?
Correct. Well, we comply with the one sightline standard that exists that relates. So we meet the setback standard that relates to health and safety.
Okay. And are you aware of the 30-inch column in that sightline?
We discussed that earlier.
You are aware of it then?
Yes.
Okay. I had another question, and that is about the trips. And you mentioned that the existing trip count, and we'll have some questions, I think, for the traffic engineers later. Is it the existing trips, is that for an approved use of a site, or is it for the current existing use?
It's for the current existing use.
So that current existing use includes a cafe and includes an office building. Do you know how many trips are made to that office building?
Well, I would defer to the city's traffic engineer on these specific questions. I would point you to page 5 of the traffic report. It has the information on what the traffic consultant advised on how many trips are currently coming in and out. And I mean, I can recite what that table 1 says, but I'm not the expert on traffic.
Yeah, I believe that was based on the approved use, not the current use. And I will discuss that more with a traffic engineer. Others? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask about one of the questions that one of the speakers raised about where construction vehicles will be. I know we have this pending condition of approval about, in out, but, and I don't know that you're the best person from the team to ask about this, but can somebody address the question about where construction vehicles will park during the different phases of construction?
So I'm not the right person to, but I will only say from the legal perspective, that question is why there's the condition of approval 106 and what the project safety plan would address. But
Ken Rodriguez, project architect. Miles is right. That condition was placed or recommended by the Planning Commission. Our client accepted that. At this particular stage, a construction mitigation plan has not been done yet, and it is a condition of approval that it be done prior to building approval. So from that standpoint, that's when how these trucks would come in and out, what would be the method of them exiting the site, entering the site, the times, all of that, which is yet to be prepared, but part of the conditions of approval.
Okay, and just so I understand the condition correctly, you interpret that to mean doing all of that in coordination with high school district staff?
And the town of Los Gatos, correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I just defer to staff too, if they feel something different, but that's what I understood it to be at the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay. So did that use the 3 minutes? Yes, okay. So now I will close the public portion of the hearing. We will take a 10-minute break, and so we'll return at 9:15. Thank you. We're back in session. So I just wanted to start with a real simple question. How many hearings have been held on this application so far?
This is the second public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will go to council members for questions on whatever they would like. So, Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I feel like this is an important one to walk through. I don't know if you or traffic engineer can talk about the traffic study, because I think a lot of times people see a project and say, oh, you're going to build this and it's going to add this much traffic. And if someone can walk through what it means for net change, existing versus the changes and how peak hour are measured. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Mike Vroman, Senior Traffic Engineer for the town. That the existing use is an office building. It was considered as a small office building. So with the existing just under 8,300 square feet, it would generate approximately 119 trips each day. As that's a small office building. If it was converted to become a medical office building, it would generate an increased number of trips. The proposed project is multifamily homes, 30 units. It will generate 136 new daily trips. So if you deduct the existing approved use of the office building from the 136 new trips of the multifamily home, the net increase is 17 trips, as has been noted by the applicant and that question has come up. The number of trips are based upon the Institute of Transportation Engineers manual. They're in the 11th edition now, probably getting ready for the 12th edition. But they do studies throughout the country and come up with the trips based upon studies throughout the country and also in California. So those are the numbers we go on. We don't actually go out and do counts. So I can't attest to what the actual counts are now, but these are the approved use counts. And as I said, if it was a medical office building, that would be higher than the 119 shown here. So the key thing is the peak hour trips. There's actually a slight reduction. The current use generates about 14 AM peak hour trips. The proposed use would generate 11 AM peak hour trips. So that would be a slight reduction of 3 fewer trips during the AM. In the PM, it would be 6 fewer trips. And another thing is that there was not a full traffic analysis done where we look at cumulative trips and background trips, because the town's threshold is 20 new trips in a peak hour. And as I've mentioned before, that most other towns and agencies within the Santa Clara County have a threshold of 100 new trips. And because we take traffic so seriously in Los Gatos, we have a threshold of 20 new trips, which is something that most other towns, if it's a 20 new trips or 50 new trips or 80 new trips, they don't even do a traffic study. But we do that, and in this case, the applicant did a little more traffic study because of the concerns that they anticipated.
Go ahead, and then I have a question.
Okay, I have 2 other follow-ons. One is, you talked about the office, and then that's being replaced with the residential. Does that assume then the cafe, it stays the same as the new retail?
Correct.
And that nets out?
The assumption was that the cafe trips with the new retail, whether it's a cafe or another type of retail, will be the same or probably fewer trips.
Okay, so that comes. Thank you. And then one other thing, when it comes to residential trips, are residential trips differentiated by whether it's a single-family home in the suburbs versus a highly walkable area, or is residential residential?
No, there is a distinction. This is a multi-family home unit. So for a single-family home, we anticipate about almost 9.5 trips per day for each dwelling unit. For a multi-family home, the assumption is 4.54 trips, so approximately half as many trips. So that is taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I did have a question. When you prepared the report, did you observe the traffic patterns at High School Court and East Main Street? especially after the concern had been raised by the principal, the assistant principal, and the superintendent, and numerous parents and students?
One point of clarification, that I did not prepare the report. The report was prepared by a transportation consultant who is doing work for the environmental consultant. So that I've reviewed the report, but I didn't prepare the report.
Okay, and are you aware of how much time that consultant spent at that corner observing the traffic patterns and the quite a few very abnormal traffic situations, I would say, that I'll comment on later? How much time did the consultant spend
I don't know
out
if
there?
he's on. I've spent time out at that corner and other corners within the school, and over the last few years when I've been working with the town. So I am fairly familiar, but I don't know if the consultant, I believe he's on available via Zoom, or he may be available during Zoom.
Okay, that would be helpful.
If staff can
So
let me know
Gary-
the name of the consultant.
So Gary Black, if he's on the call with Hexagon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council. My name is Terry Whistler Adam with EMC Planning Group. I'm not with Hexagon, but Hexagon is a transportation consultant under contract to us to do the work. I think you did ask if they had spent time observing the conditions around the project site in the school, especially since the principal brought up the issues. The transportation report was completed long before the public review period began and before we were made aware of the principal's concerns.
If I could follow up, were you aware that that corner is located next to the high school?
Yes, we are aware of that, and as was Hexagon.
And so if I could follow up, how much time did that consultant spend observing what was going on at that corner?
There was nothing in the report that indicated how long they observed the transportation issues at the site.
Okay. I had another question related to that. This was a question that I asked of Mr. Imwali, and that was how the existing trips are calculated. Is that based on the existing zoning, or is that based on the existing current situation?
Yeah, CEQA allows you to, or requires you to look at the existing, or we can also refer to as the baseline environmental conditions at the site. And so what Hexagon looked at was the type of land use that is currently there, which is a commercial office building and a cafe. And they use the trip generation rates provided in the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual to identify how many trips are associated with a commercial project of the size that's at the site. So they prepare the baseline or the existing, which I think as the town transportation engineer indicated was 119 trips per day, existing land use, compared to the 136 trips per day of the proposed project, which results in the net increase of 17 trips.
Okay, so if I could follow up on that, would it surprise you if there were considerably fewer people using that office building and that cafe than what is in that report? In other words, based on my experience, I saw one customer at the cafe who was not a student on the 2 days I observed in the morning, and I observed one employee in the office building. Prior to that, it was a medical office that didn't open until after 9 a.m. So would it surprise you that the existing use would be considerably less than what's in the report?
I think whether it's existing or another type of commercial use there, it's going to be different based on the type of enterprise or business that is there. And so because, for example, if that building was vacant, it could be occupied fairly easily without going through the CEQA process by something that's consistent with the type of land use that it's designated for. So that's why CEQA allows us to not only use existing conditions, but what we refer to as baseline or historical conditions. So transportation engineers take the type of land use that it is, it's commercial, and they apply the rates from the Institute of Transportation Engineers manual. So the actual trip generation could be different with any type of commercial development that's there. I think as the town transportation engineer had mentioned, the ITE trip rates are based on years and years of information that's provided by transportation engineers throughout California and throughout the United States.
And so one last question on this. Do you ever use actual information by observing the traffic, or is it always based on the theoretical, the ITE, and the handbook?
That's a good question. It really depends on the particular situation and the scope of work that is determined in consultation with town staff.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Badami?
Question for staff. The town is on heightened alert to wildfire risk and lack of evacuation routes. So who makes the determination of what constitutes a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, and how do you qualify it?
That will be determined by whether or not there's an objective written standard relating to public health or safety that's triggered by the project.
How do building codes and fire codes come into play with this?
I'll start, and then the project planner can follow on. When a planning application comes to the town, it's routed to the various town departments for review against the codes. And so, for instance, the building department would review the project against the building code, and County Fire, with whom the town contracts, would review the project against the state fire codes.
And so this project has been reviewed and there's no adverse impact to public safety?
I'll jump on. Yes, so both the building department and the Santa Clara County Fire Department have reviewed and approved this project with draft conditions.
And through the mayor, just to get back to Councilmember Badami's question regarding evacuation routes, I think I've made this comment in other forums. The potential idea from an evacuation standpoint of a adopted, quantifiable, objective standard with evacuation routes would be maybe we do like Mill Valley did. They run the model with Google or whoever runs that. It says it's going to take us X hours to evacuate from, varying points. And so then you'd probably have to come up with some technical expertise related to evacuation impacts and then set some threshold of when an impact is significant from the addition of additional units, let's say, along an evacuation route that's adopted. So that's the one instance that usually comes to my head as a quantifiable, objective health and safety standard as it relates to evacuation routes.
Thanks, Mr. Paulson.
I had another question, traffic. Well, transportation related with the hexagon report. In the report, it talks about the site distance at the project driveway, and it describes, I think in one point it says that the sight lines would be improved by the existing project. Does an obstruction such as that column that on a diagonal would be 42 inches, is that relevant to looking at the sight lines at that corner?
Depending on where you were, it could be, but generally it wouldn't be consequential, because if you stopped and that was obstructing your vision, you'd roll forward a foot and get that out of your sight. So the simple column there wouldn't be considered an obstruction. But overall, they did go back out and reviewed that after that question came about sight distance at the corner, because the original report did not address that. They went back out and reconfirmed that the sight distance would actually be improved with the proposed building over and above what is there now.
And so I would appreciate if you could elaborate on that a little bit, maybe with the help of the diagram that was prepared, on how, not the sight distance on Church, but the sight distance at that corner with that 30 by 30 inch column would be improved.
Well, I think I'll read directly from, is the proposed new building would be set back at least 10 feet from Church Street and Main Street, and about 5 feet from High School Court. So in addition, the corners of the proposed building would be chamfered for greater visibility. So with those, and the existing building comes up to the back of the sidewalk, as was noted by the applicant. It's almost on the property line, but it comes back up to the sidewalk on Church, High School Court, and Main Street. So it would be significant improvements of sight distance of the proposed building versus the existing building.
So was the traffic engineer who wrote that aware of that 30 inch by 30 inch post at the corner?
It doesn't mention that post. I would assume so, but that, as I said, that single post wouldn't impact it would impact if you sat right there. But if you rolled forward a few, half a foot, you wouldn't have that obstruction any longer. So they did not address that post.
Okay. Question for the town attorney. The findings in the regarding sight distance, sight lines, and safety that are in the traffic report or the transportation report, does the council have to accept those as they are, or can the council's own observations and common sense be part of the judgment in evaluating that transportation report with regard to this public safety issue?
If the council has questions or concerns about the report, ultimately the council is the entity that needs to approve the CEQA document, and so it is within the council's purview to ask that additional information be provided in the report.
Okay, thank you. And would testimony from the assistant principal, the principal, and the superintendent regarding that traffic situation at that corner, would that be relevant in the council evaluating the findings in the report?
I'd need to research that and get back to the council.
Okay. Wouldn't public testimony be something that the council could consider?
Of course, the council can consider public testimony. With regard to environmental impacts, there is specific case law on what constitutes evidence, and so I would need to refresh my memory on that.
Okay, that would be helpful. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So a couple different questions. So just so I'm clear on what Councilmember Badami was asking, so both the building department and the fire department did not find an objective, specific adverse impact. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then so sort of on this, also on this traffic infrastructure piece, one of the things the high school is asking about is improvements being made to the building. They talked about, bollards, crosswalks, crossing guards, speed bumps. How will it be determined what sorts of infrastructure improvements will be made around the building?
I can address that. We've been working on traffic improvements on East Main with the high school for many years. That we put in the green bike lanes, as Councilmember Aristo may remember, the green bike lanes several years ago. There's a current CIP project to enhance, further enhance crosswalks. We put in the high visibility crosswalks before my time. I don't know how long ago that was with signage. We've looked at curb bulbs. We looked at speed tables, and we're currently working on a CIP project to improve, to put in curb extensions or curb bulb outs at some of the crossings along East Main to enhance safety further. We probably 7 or 8 years ago, we worked with the school to establish loading zones on both sides of the street for parents who are coming on the school side and parents going down towards the boulevard. So we established loading zones, worked with the school to establish loading zones. So over the course of the years, we've worked closely with the school, but I've never had any complaints or concerns about that specific corner. And I checked with our prior traffic engineer, and he hadn't received any complaints or concerns about that corner either. So, if you have any further questions?
If I could, if you don't mind, Gary Heeper, the town engineer. We've also recently done a lot of red curbing in the area in compliance with AB 413 at those crosswalks to make sure we have adequate sight distance and sight lines at those crosswalks per the new law. So that's something that we've also done in the area, and we've been working with the school, met them on site to talk to them about those specifically.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful and good to know. I guess, and I love the idea of the bulb outs, and I think speed tables, raised crosswalks are a great idea there, just personally. I guess my question was more about, I know as we build new developments, the developers in many cases will be required to pay for certain improvements that were not otherwise going to happen, or perhaps were, but get sped up. Do you foresee anything like that happening sort of outside of what was already being planned?
There's no nexus on the traffic study, and so there's no such thing on this project at this time.
Okay, because of the low number of
Right.
increased trips, there's not a nexus.
Right, because actually, as I said, is during the peak hours, there's going to be slightly fewer trips.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. To follow up on that, because I was curious about a nexus, I thought I saw in here one improvement that would be mandated by this project, and that was bulb outs at the crosswalk at that corner.
Well, as part of that we're doing that as part of the CIP project, not.
Okay, that's not.
Excuse me, I sit corrected.
Good evening. James Watson, Senior Engineer in Parks and Public Works. We actually did condition the project to do some bulb outs on the northeast side. I'd have to get the actual condition, but there were some bulb outs that I think that you saw in there.
Okay, so parts of the infrastructure, the pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure that this project touches, they will be
Essentially
doing
the corners, right. We were trying to get the corners done for the pedestrians walking down Main Street and then also going, not Church,
Got it.
School Court. Thank you.
Okay, and then I have a follow-up question for the consultant, if she's here. Is she? Can we get her back on Zoom? Okay, thank you. There's a lot of discussion about what a giant mess the traffic is there, and I know it, I live it, I've seen it. To the extent that we have an existing horrible traffic situation that pretty much renders that section of street almost non-functional for about 10 to 20 minutes, at least twice a day. How does that play into a traffic study and the impact of additional traffic if a new project is adding X number of car trips? And how is that impacted whether you've got really horrible conditions or really good conditions? Can you walk me through that, please?
Sure, it's a good question. So I'm going to answer it from a purely CEQA perspective and what's required to be evaluated by the California Environmental Quality Act. We no longer look at level of service and intersection operations as an environmental impact. The state legislature changed that several years ago. Now we look at vehicle miles traveled as the method for determining whether a project has a significant traffic impact or transportation impact. And because this project doesn't result in a net increase of significant vehicle miles traveled, the impact is not significant. That doesn't mean that intersection operations are not an issue. And I think the town takes that seriously and does require, under certain circumstances, that traffic operations at intersections be evaluated. That's typically outside of the CEQA process. So I would defer to, again, the town's engineers to answer the question regarding the operations at the intersection.
Okay, thank you. So I guess what I'm trying to do is, from a mathy point of view, if you have, and I'm not, in my mind, if you have literally hundreds of cars at an intersection and you have 8 more cars, is that as significant as if you had 20 cars at an intersection and added 8 more cars? I'm just trying to understand, like, what real impact this project will have when you've already got a non-functional intersection.
Well, when the analysis, we still do the level of service analysis. That's part of our requirements. But as I mentioned, because they didn't hit the threshold of 20 trips, which is that they didn't hit that threshold, but because each peak hour was fewer, so we didn't have to do the level of service study. But but if depending on where you add those trips, if you add trips to a movement that isn't heavily traveled now and you add more trips, the level of service may actually improve for the intersection. So it can be tricky when you do those calculations. And we didn't do those, so I don't want to speculate on that.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question for the environmental consultant. There was a question about children's safety and whether the safety of children was evaluated in the environmental impact report. And the response was that it's not an environmental concern, so children's safety is not evaluated. I'm reading on page 50 of the evaluation of environmental impacts report, and I'm reading item under 9, hazards and hazardous materials, and I consider hazards to relate to safety. One of the items there was about impairing the implementation of or physically interfering with an adopted emergency response plan or emergency evacuation plan. And that was considered no impact. Was that evacuation plan from the high school evaluated?
The evacuation plan from the high school was not evaluated. We looked at the, I believe it was called the Santa Clara County Multi-Hazard Plan, and determined that development of this project would not conflict with that.
Okay, I had another question about the EIR. Under 17, on page 68, C, would the project substantially increase hazards due to a geometric design feature, e.g. sharp curves or dangerous intersections, or incompatible uses, e.g. farm equipment. Would the consideration of sight lines at in an intersection that we already know has incidents of injuries to students as well, and would additional traffic and transportation, and particularly with the reduced sight lines caused by the exceptions, would that be a potential impact, safety or other impact?
Yes, the transportation report did address site distance at the project driveway, and using Caltrans standards determined that that the stopping site distance would be adequate for the design speed of 25 miles per hour, and therefore concluded that the site distance was adequate. And then I believe the town transportation or traffic engineer did confirm that Hexagon went out and did some additional analysis and confirmed that the site distance was actually improved with the project.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Rennie, do you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
No questions at this time. I'm just listening to everybody else.
Mary, if it's appropriate, I have an answer to your question about the evidence.
Yeah, thank you.
So under CEQA, substantial evidence definitely consists of expert opinion. It can also consist of testimony received on the record. So long as it's based on facts, it can't be speculative.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if we could take a look at the one of the exceptions that's requested, and that's the setback exception. Is it possible for us to look at what the building code is regarding that? Could we see that on the screen maybe?
Just to clarify, referring to the zoning code setback standards?
Yes, on that. It's particularly on High School Court and East Main Street there.
Okay. If Ms. Wood, if you could put up the C2 setback standards. And additionally, I'd point out that the site plan and floor plans of the development plans do show the town required setbacks in a red line. So in fact, that's what I'm using to confirm what these setbacks are currently. So once we get that page up, I'll start.
Is it possible to enlarge that a bit? While we're doing that, are setbacks generally objective standards?
Generally, but actually in this specific instance, the deciding body has the ability to reduce any of these setbacks in the C2 zone.
Okay, reduce, but it would still be a reduction of an objective standard. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's an objective standard.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
I have a setback question if we're okay waiting. Did the developer present an adequate waiver for the setbacks under state law?
Thank you for the question. So with builder's remedy, unlike with state density bonus law, you don't have to tie back to exactly why you need it. It's a part of the project, and builder's remedy allows these exceptions.
And so it's not considered a waiver under builder's remedy? That's a 330 thing?
That's correct. This applicant is using builder's remedy as opposed to density bonus law. The Housing Accountability Act provides that the town has the ability to impose objective standards so long as they would not render the project infeasible.
Okay, thank you.
And generally, Mayor, through the mayor,
Yes, go
I
ahead.
think while they're trying to get the actual language up there, I think, and Mr. Safdie can correct me, but we do have residentially zoned properties. The high school is residentially zoned. The church behind it is residentially zoned. So the 3 setbacks, as I'm reading this, are likely to be required to be 15 feet, where 10's typically required. The other caveat, which is the kind of daylight plane that we have in many of our commercial zones, is that for every foot over 20 feet in height, you're technically supposed to set back an extra foot, so it gives you that effect. But again, those would be what I believe the requirements are. I'm not sure if Mr. Safdie has any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, I actually do have the C2 zone section in front of me, so I'm happy to try to read them.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be just fine.
So for the front and side abutting a street, the setback requirements are 10 feet. Side setback is 0, rear is 0. And then to the director's point, any property in the C2 zone which abut or across the street from a lot in a residential zone, which is different than saying a residential property. We got to look at the actual residential zoning. Those setbacks do increase. The front goes up to 15, side abutting a street goes up to 15, and the side or rear goes to 20. And then the other point Joel, or Director Paulson made, plus 1 foot of each foot of building height over 20 feet needs to be added to the side or the rear setbacks, not to the front or the street side setbacks. So I'm happy to tell you what the required setbacks are for this property.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the front setback along East Main Street in this instance is 10 feet. The required side yard setback along High School Court is 15. The required, where in this case it's a double frontage lot, so it's the back front property line on Church Street is 15 feet, and the only side and or rear setback on this property is 0 feet. That's the internal side yard shared with the Masonic Hall.
And if you could just tell us what the project setback is. You've told us what the requirement is.
Should have seen that coming. Certainly. So the proposed setbacks, which are actually shown clearest on attachment 8. So just give me a second to pull that up. And so, of course, due to the actual size and design of the building, these setbacks are a range. But the proposed front setback along East Main Street goes as close as 4 foot 11 inches. And again, we said 10 feet was the required setback there. The side yard setback on High School Court goes as close as 5 foot 11 inches. And I believe we said 15 was the required there. The rear goes as close as 9 foot 4 inches when 15 is required, and the internal side yard complies. They've got a couple feet when 0 is required.
Okay, thank you. Were there any discussions with the developer about complying with those setbacks? And if they were, how many units they might lose?
Those conversations never occurred. These were the setbacks that were proposed on the first iteration.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Badami?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the side setback? We require 15 feet, and I didn't hear you with what the project is proposing.
The street side setback on High School Court?
Yes.
The project proposing 5'11" inches.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
One more question related to that. There's an existing building there. It seems like it's non-conforming. Is there a requirement that a new building be given the same non-conforming setbacks or status if it's replaced?
Thank you for that question. So no, if they were to keep at least 50% of the framing and not be called a full demolition, they would be able to keep the existing non-conforming, but once you demolish that structure, it's required to be brought into conformance.
Okay, so the standard isn't what exists there, it's our standards for setbacks, is that correct?
Correct. The setbacks are one of the exceptions per the Builder's Remedy project.
Right, okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So I'm trying to reconcile sort of the difference between us having setbacks as an objective standard that exists today in town code with the builder's remedy. So does the builder's remedy directly call out setbacks as something that developers can ignore?
It speaks to objective standards, and it says local agencies can impose objective standards so long as they would not render the housing development project infeasible.
And so I'm understanding that. Would you think that then a developer would argue in court that if we required their full setbacks, their project would be infeasible?
Probably. And so, it depends on what information the applicant supplies to the town on why compliance with those objective standards would render the project infeasible.
Okay, thank you.
A follow-up to that, would there, again, hypothetically be any discussion about safety and the reason for having those objective standards?
So if you're thinking that the setbacks in the town were adopted due to public health and safety concerns, my recommendation would be that town staff go back and look at the ordinances that impose the setback requirement to begin with, to see what the basis was for requiring the setbacks.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that, if there were testimony that those setbacks present a site health and safety issue for people who are driving and people who are walking, etc., is that a consideration in those particular objective standards? Or do they apply regardless of whether there's any health or safety issues?
So there's two separate concepts. One is the town's ability to apply its objective standards. The other is CEQA. And if the town were to have fact-based testimony that there were impacts that weren't examined in the mitigated negative declaration, that would be a grounds for the town council to request changes to the mitigated negative declaration.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Kind of following up on that. So a couple of things. I mean, I'm hearing everything. I just want to check. I know that the original building doesn't meet our setbacks. This new building still doesn't meet them, but it is stepped back. It's more setback than the original building that's there right now?
That is correct. Attachment 8 of this staff report packet contains an exhibit with a red and blue outline showing existing footprint, proposed footprint. So the building does come further into the site on the 3 street sides. But of course, the existing building is mostly a parking lot, so it's, you know, the footprint's getting larger, but it's not getting closer to the street.
Oh, right, as it continues. And then the other question is, you know, I know our setbacks are an objective standard to be determined if they're based on safety. Our sight lines are based on safety, correct? And our sight line at that corner was already checked or evaluated?
I'd have to confirm with the engineering department.
There was no mention. I'd have to check with the consultant because they didn't issue that. I was not aware of any sight distance concerns on the existing corner, and so that wasn't specified in their study. They did go back and said that the sight distance would be better now with the proposed building.
Okay, so the information we have is that it's improved.
Yes.
Okay, but not that it met any, I don't know if we have rules about what the sight line has to be.
Well, no, I think it does with the, well, they confirmed the proposed driveway would meet the stopping sight distance required, and they suggested red curb on either side of the driveway to prohibit cars from parking close. They didn't make any such observation. So based on their observations, they said the corner sight distance was satisfactory. And
Okay.
It would be better with the new building.
And our red curb daylighting essentially increases sight line?
Well, the daylighting is back on the other side. It doesn't apply to the corner on the building there, because the daylight is for the approach side of the crosswalk.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could follow up on that diagram and my question earlier, there's no designation of that column 30 inches by 30 inches. That would be 42 inches at an angle on that. And as far as I know, there was no mention of that in the traffic engineer's report about sight lines, about that column being there. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think that it's like a tree. If there's a tree on the corner, that wouldn't necessarily impact the sight distance.
And I would just note that although they didn't call out the column, the consultant did confirm that they reviewed the latest iterations of the plans, which did show the post. It just was not specifically called out.
Okay, thank you. Are there more questions, or would folks like to offer their thoughts and see if we can move this along? I'll just offer just a couple of observations. I did spend a fair amount of time there today, almost 3 hours, and last Wednesday as well. And my sense was that is one of the most, if not the most, dangerous intersections in our town. And some of the things, and so when I think about this, is will this project make it less safe? And so some of the things that I saw there were some terrible driving that was going on in terms of people turning in quickly, doing U-turns, pedestrians having to scurry out of the way. And I noticed a couple of cars got up to the intersection. I believe they couldn't see, so they backed up and then turned into Church Street. I saw, just in the time that I was there, a situation that is very much consistent with what I heard from the assistant principal, and superintendent. And that, to me, highlighted the safety concerns regarding the sight lines at that intersection, and the safety concerns that, in my mind, are exacerbated by ignoring the setback requirements that the town has as objective standards. So I'm asking myself, how can I approve a project where there are objective standards regarding setbacks, and I have testimony that there's safety issues concerning those very standards. And putting those things together, it makes it extremely difficult, even though the state compels us to ignore our local building and zoning codes. But there is an exception for health and safety. And so I have a great concern with approving this with the testimony that I have about safety, coupled with the objective standard of setback that isn't coming into play. And I'm wondering whether this project could abide by the setbacks and still have a lovely building at a very important place for housing, but still not present the safety issues if that setback were increased to what the town objective standards are. So those are questions that I have. Welcome thoughts from other council members. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. For the town attorney, process-wise, if the town council were to deny this project, just for instance, and the developer chose to sue the town, and the town lost, how would that impact our ability to apply standards of any kind to or how could an outcome impact our ability to make any choices on what the project looks like?
With regard to a single project, if the plaintiffs were to prevail, they would be awarded attorney's fees, and then there would be a court order to approve the project as it was applied for. And then if the town did not comply within a specified amount of time, there are penalties that can be imposed of up to $10,000 per unit.
Thank you.
Councilmember Badami.
We're allowed 5 hearings, so this is the second one. And I understand that the architect and the applicant has heard a lot of testimony from a lot of our residents, superintendent of the high school, where we have a lot of concerns over the safety. So that being said, we would like to have a really nice project that fits within our community. And I would be hoping that with a continuance that the applicant would reconsider abiding by our setbacks just to make this a much safer project for our community and for the 2,100 students at the high school. I don't know if they would be amenable to that, but I certainly, rather than just deny this, give them an opportunity to make it a more refined project that better fits within the community. So that the public understands that this is a builder's remedy project, and it's the result of a 1.5-year delay in getting certification of a substantially compliant housing element. It is what it is, and Government Code Section 65589.5 specifies permissible grounds to deny a project of which there is only 5. I see the setback exception as kind of just being a hindrance to what we could approve for you and for the community. We do need housing, but I just would like to see a continuance and just have reconsideration to make this a better project for our town. And to the architect, I knew that your kids went to school here and you're well-grounded within the town, and I think it would just be a very nice thing to our community.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I'm seeing this a little differently. I'm certainly hearing a lot of members of the public talk about the traffic issues, safety issues in this area, and basically all of these issues are already existing. We've got drivers behaving badly. We've got too many kids showing up in cars that could be walking or biking or being dropped off further away. So we already have a traffic issue that we have not been able to wrangle effectively. I don't see that that means that this project is either the problem or the solution. I have to think a little more about the setbacks, but all of what I heard was too many cars. The setbacks don't change that. I'm hearing about bad driving. I'm hearing about evacuation routes. Nothing about people's concerns will be addressed by setbacks, so I'm not seeing this as being the answer. I also know that the safety or intensity or difficult issues there exist with a building that comes closer to the sidewalk, and I'm not hearing people complain about, I can't see when I come around the corner. I'm hearing people talk about everything except that. So I don't know that this will solve all the other problems by squishing the building smaller. And I would like to see something go forward here. I think this is exactly, I think the construction will be massively impactful. So was the construction the high school did, so is the construction the club did, so potentially will be the construction if and when we rebuild this civic center. But that doesn't mean because construction is impactful that we don't allow it. I think that ultimately, when there is housing there, it's going to be an ideal place for people to be able to walk, shop, live downtown, and whether they own 1 or 2 cars, probably leave their car and get around without a car a lot more than everybody up the hill or down the road. So I think, you know, from a walkability point of view, this is a great project. Getting 6 affordable units in a very walkable place is a bonus for young people, potentially teachers. So I'm just feeling like this, every project we're going to look at in town is going to be difficult. There's going to be concerns about if we put the project far away from a downtown area, that's going to create even more traffic because people will drive everywhere. If we put it downtown, people are concerned about the parking. My biggest concern with this issue, with this project, is if it's underparked. I think of the 2 options that we've got, I would be very concerned about option 2 where there's fewer parking spaces. This is possibly the most parking impacted part of town. We don't have any large municipal lots. We've got businesses, we've got high school students, we've got the Civic Center, and everybody complains about parking here, and there's not a lot of reallocation. Our best option is to tell people to go over to Miles Avenue, which is a 5 to 10 minute walk away. So I would be very concerned if this project does not provide adequate parking for the residents and the building. And that's my biggest concern at the moment.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Yeah, so I have a few different thoughts. I'll just really quickly address some things that I heard. So I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Bristow just said. The underparking is definitely an issue that I'm concerned about as well. So I would much prefer the design with more parking spaces. But just to address what we're talking about here with the setbacks, there's this big caveat that anything we do cannot make the project financially infeasible, and I don't see us decreasing the number of units and square footage. If we force the developer to do that, I think they have a very good argument about the economic question. I think what we could allow them to do is build it taller, but I don't think that is what the actual preference of the community is. So I think you could squeeze it and have it go up a bit, but I actually don't think that's people's preference. So I think we have to be thoughtful about what we're suggesting here. I have a few prepared thoughts I'll offer. So I first want to say how much I appreciate all the feedback we've received. I thought that the public comments, emails, and letters were all very helpful in my understanding of this, so I appreciate all of that. I think there's really important, kind of 2 competing priorities with the council. I think the council both needs to allow for the construction of more housing, but the state is forcing towns like Los Gatos to approve new housing developments regardless of whether or not they are the exact right project for the site. As part of the changes to state law, I think it's important for the community to recognize the very delicate position the town of Los Gatos is in, and that council members, at this meeting and otherwise, must be very careful to not appear or actually delay the progress of new housing development. The Housing Accountability Act is very clear about saying that if a town purposefully delays the development of new housing that is compliant with state housing law, that municipality has broken the law and can be sued. So I think we have to all be very, very thoughtful about this big caveat. As the I asked the town attorney, and the attorney said, that process can be very costly. It can also strip the town of what little authority it already has. At the same time, I think for the town council, it's imperative for us to do what is in our power to ensure these developments are the very best they can be and meet the needs of the community. I think the neighborhood immediately surrounding the community, the high school, as well as the neighborhoods, are going to be most impacted. I think the biggest stakeholder here that I see is the high school. And so I really appreciated the letter that came from the high school. I found it very thoughtful. The suggestions about limiting the hours of construction, requiring safety enhancements, ensuring audible and visible exit alerts, moving where cars enter and exit, and considering sightline objections. I thought those were all thoughtful, well-considered suggestions. I think especially during construction, as has been mentioned, this development will surely impact traffic in the area. I think there's no escaping that, and I think it's important for safety to be at top of mind for us. I'm interested in, if we move towards an approval, requiring the developer to meet regularly with Los Gatos High School staff and town staff prior to and during construction to meaningfully address some of these student safety concerns. I was also really glad to see that the Planning Commission added some of those really important conditions of approval, like the audio or the audible and visual alerts, requiring coordination with the high school, and limiting material delivery vehicles. So I think we should definitely include those. I thought that the concerns that I read from neighbors on streets like Villa, Church, College, Cleveland, Alpine, Jackson, and Johnson, we received a lot of communication, were all contained thoughtful things to consider. I think that what we've been talking about, height, density, massing, sightlines, traffic, parking, are all important considerations. I recognize that a lot of folks would like this development to be a story or two shorter, to have fewer units, to increase the quantity of affordable housing, or for it to have even more parking than option one. I think these are all legitimate concerns, and I would like to require some of these things in the perfect world, but that is not where we are, and state law limits the degree to which the town council can legally require these things. I want to briefly address a few of the positives of this project. I think architecturally this is one of the most sophisticated, if not the most sophisticated proposals that we've seen. I think it makes a really good faith effort to fit in with the surrounding community. And unfortunately, I think we've seen a lot of developments that are not doing this, to put it mildly. And so I appreciate that even if this isn't your favorite architectural style, the architecture has been carefully considered. I was glad to see that there are many smaller units in the development. These are naturally more affordable, and I hope that several of the units would end up going to teachers and staff who work at the high school. While there's less affordable units than I'd like to see, this development does bring 6 desperately needed deed-restricted affordable units to Los Gatos, and from my understanding of the town's BMP housing system, teachers at schools in Los Gatos get extra preference when seeking to purchase a below-market rate unit, which is great. It preserves existing retail space. I would hope that something like a coffee shop like Cafe Dio could go back in the bottom. And I'm glad the parking is undergrounded. To conclude, I recognize that many residents and folks working at the high school all around in the surrounding neighborhoods, for those folks, any positive impacts of this project outweigh the traffic, height, parking, all of those concerns, especially during construction. But fundamentally, I feel that my decision this evening, unfortunately, is not about whether I believe the proposal in front of us fits or is ideal or anything like that. I do think that's what these decisions should be made about, but because of changes to state housing law, that is no longer exactly what the decision is. The decision before the council tonight is whether this development is permissible under the builder's remedy. And from my understanding of the case law, the town of Los Gatos' legal interpretation of the law, guidance from staff, and my own judgment, I cannot find that this development has a specific adverse impact on objective health and safety standards. And therefore, I think we are in a position where we have to move forward with this development. I think as my role as a council member, I see my role as balancing the many competing priorities that are in front of us, and they're not easy. But if the town of Los Gatos were to deny the 15 or so SB 330 builders remedy projects in front of us, we would end up with 15 multi-million-dollar lawsuits and bankrupt the town of Los Gatos. And that's not something I'm comfortable putting us in a position to do. And so I think this is not, these are not easy decisions, but I think these are the decisions we have to consider to avoid the town of Los Gatos getting ourselves into more difficult situations.
Anyone else? I would just add that when I read that the project as proposed would have a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, and then I hear the testimony, I can't think of another builder's remedy project that would have as much of an impact, especially as I spent the hours at the high school this past week. I think it's dangerous. And I think that without addressing the sightline, we have a hazardous and dangerous situation that will result in serious issues over there. And so that's why there is a public health or safety exception to try to get some things that are actually safe, not just to build as much as we can anywhere we can. So I believe that there is that exception, and I believe that it is supported by the evidence. Councilmember Rennie, did you want to say something?
Well, I don't think I can talk as long as Councilmember Moore, Vice Mayor Moore. Just a little more simple, though. I come to the same conclusion that it is permissible per density bonus law. I think the Planning Commission did a good job of finding most of the ways to improve the project and the construction of it. I've been listening tonight for more ways to improve it. I'm not buying into the site distance thing because we're improving the site distance from the existing. The traffic is not getting worse than the existing allowed uses. And even I have even more trouble with the site distance. If it was on the other side of the street, it would make more sense to me. But if you're first thing you do when you come up to the corner is you want to see if there's pedestrians coming to cross. Well, that cornered, where the corner's taken off the building allows you to see people coming down the sidewalk. Then the next thing you do is you look into the street, except in this case, you're looking left, not right past it for the first line of traffic coming at you as you move out. If you want to take a right turn, then, it doesn't even matter what the traffic from that right side is doing. If you want to take a left turn, you need to look at to the traffic to the left, move out, and then look right before you finish your left-hand turn. By then, you're so far past where the building is that I can't, in good conscience, make logical sense out of there being a sight line problem with the building on that side of the street, particularly since it's an improvement from what it is. Again, listening to, I think there was a point that, most of the comments about their concerns on the project didn't have to do with setbacks or sight lines. So I don't see that as a way to solve it. We could continue it for another meeting, but that's just gonna not gonna change anything. It's just gonna drag it out. So my thoughts on that is I just can't find any other ways to improve this project.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Yeah, I have the same concern that Councilmember Rennie does. That we would only prolong this process. One thing I would be open to, if you wanted, would be to reopen the public hearing to hear from the developer if we asked them to add setbacks, how they would react to that. I would have been curious to hear that during the public hearing portion. But I don't want to unnecessarily prolong the process.
Town Attorney, is there the ability to reopen the public hearing for the
It
question?
can be reopened solely for the purpose of asking that question of the applicant.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and do that. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Sure. Yeah, I would mostly like to ask your question about how, if the council were to delay this to another meeting, to give y'all the time to go back and consider what you could do with the setbacks. Do you have an initial reaction to this conversation that has occurred around setbacks and sightlines?
Thank you for the question, Ken Rodriguez again. I'm very familiar, obviously, with the setbacks and how we laid this site out. And I think your summary, Vice Mayor, is exactly right. If, in fact, you're to squeeze the footprint down, the only way, from an economic standpoint, which is why we're looking at this project and the builder's remedy situation, making the project feasible, would be to go up. And I feel very comfortable stating that visually this is a better building than trying to shrink the footprint and go up higher. I also think that it makes the units less attractive than what's designed right now, because they all have open balconies. They're smaller units, as you said, and I just would leave it at that the only way to do it would be to go up. It adds a lot of cost also, besides the visual impact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, Vice Mayor.
I'll just share that answers my question. I don't think that I didn't hear anyone speak tonight that they'd like the project to be taller. So I don't think it's a good faith. I don't think it's a good faith action on our part to continue this just for us to say, no, we would like it to be, we would like to squeeze in the setbacks, but keep it at 4 stories. I don't think that's reasonable, and I think that would truly be I think the developer would have the argument that would make the project economically infeasible.
Further comments? Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I mean, when I think about the whole scheme of what we're looking at for our housing element, we've made a commitment to plan for and actually hopefully have built by 2031 about 2,000 more housing units. And this is a small drop in the bucket. This is 30 units. It contains 6 affordable units. It'll be transformative for people that can afford those units, that qualify for those units. As the Vice Mayor pointed out, the variety of sizes, the 1 and 2 bedrooms might by design be more affordable. They'll certainly be more affordable than a single family home. So we have the opportunity to have housing in an area that would be very desirable for people to live in. I think about the safety. I mentioned the whole traffic issue. The sight lines don't change any of that. We are improving sight lines, and as Councilmember Rennie pointed out, when you think about it, if you're making the left turn in there, it doesn't matter because you're so far out. I was just trying to think mechanically, like how do those sight lines impact things? I also think about the fact that we are doing work toward looking at evacuation and dealing with wildfire. I think about the fact that when we have houses that are spread way up into the hills, unfortunately, we have houses where we probably should not have houses. This is where we should have housing, where people can be not relying on cars, where they would be the first people on the freeway when they escaped. They're not going to be coming down long, twisty roads. And so I think about the fact that because we have housing where we maybe shouldn't, or where we have one-way in and one-way out roads, we should not be denying housing where it's in a good place. So I think, I look at the work that the Planning Commission did. I listened to the meeting. I heard the public comments. I think the changes they made are very helpful. And the only serious concerns I have about the project is the implementation of the construction. And that's something that'll just have to be worked out between the applicant and the high school and the town. And there has to be a road there. And I know there's going to be other construction downtown, and it's something that we're just always going to have to deal with. But making this project smaller or taller or whatever is not going to change the fact that we're going to have this difficult construction. So I'm not finding a true safety reason to deny this project.
Any more comments? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I want to ask, is the main motion in the subject or the first paragraph? I apologize that I did not prepare this in advance, and usually it's a pretty meaty one. Oh, do you have it?
Yeah, the recommendation on the cover sheet.
Okay.
For the first page of the staff report.
Okay. I realize that this is not something the community is going to be completely behind. I think with where we are with state law and where we are with this project, this is, I think, the best approach going forward. So I move to take the recommendation of the Planning Commission to adopt a resolution to approve architecture and site, conditional use permit, subdivision, and mitigated negative declaration applications to demolish the existing commercial structures, construct a mixed-use development, 30 multifamily residential units with commercial space on the ground floor, approve a condominium vesting tentative map, and remove large protected trees under Senate Bill 330 on property zoned C2. APNs 529-28-001 and 002, located at 143, 151 East Main Street. And I would like to, in this, I want to adopt the additional conditions that the Planning Commission brought forward. Is there anything I'm missing in here? I think.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I would just say that, it's basically as recommended in the staff report with attachment 2 and the conditions of approval that are attached to that as Exhibit A.
Yes, there were the conditions of approval, and they're renumbered, including the changes made by the Planning Commission. So with those conditions.
Yeah, and Mr. Safdie, can you confirm whether or not those conditions are already in the 3 additional conditions? Modified, I believe they are.
They are in there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I'll second the motion with a few friendly add-ons, assuming they're okay, which would be to additionally require the developer to meet regularly with Los Gatos High School staff and town staff prior to and during construction of the development to meaningfully address student safety concerns. And I know this is already in the planning commissions, but I'm just going to double down here on urging the developer to adopt parking option 1, especially given the conversation that has gone on tonight and the significant heartburn that I think the construction will cause.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, make one comment that I will not be supporting the motion. There's no way that I can support a development that will make things more dangerous for our children, especially when the state allows us to have a health and safety exception. And this one clearly does, from the testimony of the high school leadership. We're not just talking about, residents who are up in arms about something. We're talking about the leadership of our high school, and I take that very seriously, and I can't think of a way that I could support a development that would make things less safe for our children. So I will not be supporting the motion. I think that the project could have addressed those issues by abiding by the setbacks that the town put in place. And as far as I can tell, setbacks are put in place for safety reasons by many municipalities. And I believe that they were put in place here. And I believe that there were flaws in the work that was done by the traffic engineers in terms of evaluating some of the aspects of the project that I pointed out as well. So I believe that I did not have to take the exact recommendation from the traffic engineers without applying some common sense and without understanding the testimony of those in our community. And so I think it's something that we're going to have to live with if this passes. But I also think that we need to consider, as the Planning Commission did, the health and safety issues. And I do commend the work of the Planning Commission, especially the two planning commissioners who pointed out the health and safety issues with this project. So I'd like to, again, thank everyone for participating in this. And now we can see if there's any other comments. Councilmember Rennie.
I will just say that I'm willing to support the motion, not because I want to make things more dangerous, but in fact, I can't support the idea that it's making things more dangerous. I didn't find that in the record tonight. We heard over and over that sight distance is improving. We heard that trips during peak hours are actually a little bit less. So I can't find anything in the evidence in the record tonight that would allow me to deny this project based on safety. So I'm going to have to support the motion and in this case keep the town out of a lawsuit that we can't win. Thank you.
No further comments, then I'll call the question. We need to actually do a roll call vote on this, correct?
Councilmember Isto?
Aye.
Councilmember Rennie?
Aye.
Councilmember Benami?
No.
Vice Mayor Moore?
Aye.
Mayor Hudas?
No. the item passes 3-2. Vice Mayor, do you have an additional comment?
Yeah, just one final comment. So I think given this question about setbacks and how they relate to health and safety, I'd just like to recommend that town staff look into this and report back to the council about where the nexus for setbacks came from and if it cannot be tied to health and safety.
For staff, is that a clear request?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, we have concluded the item that's on the agenda, and so I thank everyone for their attention, and this meeting is adjourned. This meeting, correct.
I am required to report it at the next regular meeting.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Adjourned.